Chapter 181. NT. Regular Chapter. 5 more pending regular chapters. Enjoy! Chapter 181. Join the team. There was no such thing as free lunch under the sun. If you want to obtain something, you must pay for it. But Yi Shiwen did not care. He believed in the saying, no pain, no gain. So he must face dangers in order to obtain something beneficial. But this time, the difficulty was not just the dangers in Devil Commander's tomb. He also need to be wary of so many other warriors. This time, many warriors obtained this news. Moreover, all of these experts were basically at the truth level. Some of them were even at truth 7th stage, 8th stage, and 9th stage as well. As far as the eyes could see, there were countless warriors everywhere in this area. Probably, all of the top warriors in the nearby areas of East China Sea had come out to try their luck in Devil Commander's tomb. Since Senior Yi has not formed a team, then might as well join our team, Qian said. Well, deference is no substitute for obedience. Yi Shiwen nodded. Since he knew very little about this Devil Commander's tomb, so it was better to stick together with others. NT. Gongjing Bu Ru Songming. Deference is no substitute for obedience, idiom. This was also good from the point of view of mutually taking care of each other. After Yi Shiwen agreed, Qian took him to an island, which was not a big island. It was quite spacious, but there were no spiritual arteries under the island, and therefore there were no living things on the island. Not even a shred of vegetation was present there. Otherwise, it would have been occupied by demon beasts. Throughout the East China Sea, there were many islands with spiritual arteries, but there were no spiritual arteries in this big island, the reason why no one bothered to even name it. Qian and her teammates were going to meet up on this island. According to what she told, he came to know that Qian was a member of loose cultivators of East China Sea. In Zhenwu Jie, in addition to disciples belonging to major sects like Yuan School, there were many loose cultivators who were often considered as loners. They could come and go freely. Some were very weak, but some of them possessed earth-shattering cultivation level. Basically, it was hard to predict their strength, and they often consisted of good and bad people. However, in Zhenwu Jie, there were several small sects, with each sect housing only few individuals. Basically, these small sects were called loose cultivation sects, and when compared to giant sects like Yuan School, which was a home to several 100,000 disciples, these loose cultivation sects appeared just like shrimps in front of a shark. Yi Shiwen did not want to expose his identity as a disciple of a Yuan School, so he directly said that he was also a loose cultivator, but he had already told his real name to Qian. Qian didn't suspect him. After all, although Yi Shiwen was very strong, but if he was a disciple of a major sect, then he would have definitely arrived here with his group of friends. One must not forget that this place was an ancient battlefield, although it was not the most active ancient battlefield, but it was still dangerous, so when coming here, generally only loose cultivators would come here alone. NT. Assuming Yi Shiwen is a truth-level expert, and it belongs to a major sect, then he must have his own faction and a long list of subordinates/attendants. Although they had been classified as loose cultivation sects, but in the end, all of them taught martial arts just like any other major sect. This place is located on the periphery of Great Immortal Battlefield and is a relatively safe place. As we go deeper, it gets very dangerous since a lot of truth-level demon beasts wander in those areas. If we go further deep inside, then we will encounter even more terrifying demon beasts. As long as we are on the land, we are safe. But if go into the sea, then we will encounter overwhelming demon beasts. They are extremely frightening. Qian said with a lingering fear on her face. Fortunately, they rarely come out of the water, and when they do, their strength gets weakened a lot. Otherwise, humans cannot even think about having a foothold in the sea. The population of human experts was nowhere close to the population of demon beasts. It could be said that there were 10 times more truth-level demon beasts than truth-level human beings. But fortunately, most of these truth-level demon beasts lived in several established demon beast countries. Not to mention the total population of demon beasts in this world was 100 times more compared to that of human beings, but majority of them were still in muddle-headed mental state. Basically, they were no different than common beasts in general, and this was maintaining the fragile balance of power. Many masters have gone deeper into the East China Sea, but never came back. It is said that legendary level mythological beasts live there. Qianqian said, "Our sect had been flourishing very until the founder went into the depths of East China Sea, never to return, and finally, our sect declined to what it is right now." Yi Shiwen listened and sighed with emotion. Indeed, this kind of thing happened all the time in Zhenwu Jie. A sect's prosperity would always depend on how many top players it had. For example, in a Yuan school, in a sense, if the core disciples, inner disciples, or outer disciples were to die, then it certainly won't matter much. In fact, even if a true disciple was to die, then it won't matter. As long as the sect head and other leaders were alive, everything else was unimportant for sect survival and prosperity. Well, if a true disciple of a Yuan school dies, then the sect will certainly wreak havoc. But the death of a true disciple certainly doesn't endanger the existence of a Yuan school. But the loss of leaders or the sect head, who are all legendary level characters, will certainly affect the balance of power among the 5 major forces and will definitely give a serious blow to the sect. Yuan school was such a big sect, but the death of a legendary level expert was a major event for them. Not to mention, Qianqian's loose cultivation sect lost a legendary level master, which was sufficient to determine the fate of her sect. The major difference between a major sect like Yuan school and loose cultivation sect was the dependence of the very survival of the entire sect on death of its top players. In case of loose cultivation sect, the death of just one important character could lead to the collapse of entire sect. And this was the reason why major sects would never give recognition and acknowledgement to the loose cultivation sections. But as far as Yi Shiwen was concerned, someday, he would eventually travel to the depths of East China Sea. It would actually be a grand occasion. After all, even the influence of the so-called Yuan school could not stretch up to those areas, but it was something far in the future. As for now, Yi Shiwen was merely a master of the truth realm and could only wander back and forth in these marginal areas. He couldn't possibly think about going into the depths of East China Sea at his current strength. While Yi Shiwen and Qianqian were still chatting, suddenly, the air began to boil in the sky, and several rainbows appeared to be flying towards them. It was obvious that they visitors weren't ordinary people. The rainbow light is enormous and powerful, and it seemed as if the river's streams were converging in the sea at very high speeds. The rainbows directly rushed down and fell on the island's beach. As the rainbow lights began to disperse, the shadows of 4 people could be seen. The one standing at the front seemed to be their leader. He was clad in a splendid attire, had an imposing appearance, and also had a heroic bearing, which was quite unusual. There was sort of self-satisfied expression on his face, but when he saw Yi Shiwen standing behind Qianqian, his complexion immediately changed and turned unsightly. A sharp look appeared in his eyes while he was staring at Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen could easily read the look in that guy's eyes. He was secretly aware in his heart that this guy was troubled by his presence, but he didn't say anything. One could find these pampered and favored guys everywhere, who were often ambitious, successful, and were used to governing everything around them. They also considered women as their own property and would naturally not allow others to intervene. There were 3 people standing behind this man, 1 man and 2 women. The man also had a heroic bearing and had an outstanding appearance. However, he could only be considered as low-key when compared to the man standing in front of him. He was standing there with a faint smile on his face and didn't seem like an aggressive guy. He belonged to the category of those people who were unable to look straight ahead. Besides this man, the remaining 2 were women. One was clad in a yellow robe, and the other was clad in brilliant orange clothing. Both of them could be considered as reigning beauties, but were slightly inferior to Qianqian. Senior Yi, let me introduce you to everyone. This is Su Yingdao, the most outstanding true disciple from the current generation of true disciples in the great island of immortals. I am afraid his strength is not inferior to the strength of your mainland's 8th prince. Qianqian said. Earlier, Yi Shiwen had said that he was a loose cultivator from the mainland and didn't belong to the side of loose cultivators of East China Sea. Hence Qianqian said so. Yi Shiwen felt disdain in his heart, although that 8th prince had not yet made an appearance, but judging from the war declaration, One could make out that his strength was unimaginably. Even many experts of Truth 5th stage were not his opponents. No one knew the extent of the 8th prince's current strength, but Yi Shiwen had already seen through the cultivation of this man. He was only at the peak of Truth 3rd stage. His strength was far worse than that of the 8th prince. There was simply a huge gap between the strengths of these two. In fact, his strength was not even comparable to the strengths of the higher-level Imperial Guards. However, it seemed like in the great island of the Immortals, he was treated as a highborn. Then from the introduction by Qianqian, Yi Shiwen came to know that the other guy was named Qi Fei and was also a strong truth-level expert, but he didn't belong to the famous clans of the great island of the Immortals. Perhaps this was the reason behind low-key appearance. The yellow-robed woman was named Miao Lian, and the orange-robed woman was named Fan Yun. Both of them were at the 3rd stage of Truth Realm. Similarly, both Qi Fei and Su Yingdao were at the peak of Truth 3rd stage, and it seemed like soon they should be able to become the masters of the Truth 4th stage. One could assume that they were considered outstanding experts in their respective sections. Qianqian, I hope it should be very clear that the place we plan to visit this time is said to be very dangerous. We may be unable to take care of ourselves. How do you plan to take care of someone else as well? At this time, Su Yingdao suddenly said while looking at Yi Shiwen. The hidden meaning in his words was very clear. Considering how he was looking at Yi Shiwen, it was obvious that he was talking about Yi Xiwen's cultivation, which was only at the 2nd stage of Truth Realm. In other words, his strength should be regarded as nothing when compared to their strengths. Moreover, we have been running this team for many years and trust each other very much, but you go and start rashly recruiting new people into our team. What will we do if he harbors evil intentions? Su Yingdao continued to say. Yi Shiwen was looking at the side, with a hint of indifferent smile on his face, but he did not say anything. On the contrary, it was Qi Fei who tried to smooth things out and said, since Qianqian has asked this person to join our team, then she would certainly have a valid reason for that. We should first listen to what she has to say. At this time, everyone's attention was on Qianqian as she said, well, everyone, do not be fooled by Senior Yes cultivation level. Although he is still at the 2nd stage of Truth Realm, but he is actually much stronger. Earlier, I was fighting with a giant shark and fell under the wind, but when I was about to be killed by it, Senior Yi saved me. Suddenly, everyone looked at Yi Shiwen with astonished expressions on their faces. To be continued. Chapter 182. NT. Regular Chapter. For more pending regular chapters. It's a long chapter, but quite entertaining. Enjoy! Chapter 182. The so-called putting to test suddenly. Everyone looked at Yi Shiwen with astonished expressions on their faces. They knew well that Qianqian's strength was enough to make her part of their elite team. Needless to say, her strength was at the 3rd stage of Truth Realm, quite tyrannical, perhaps not the strongest, but it was not weaker compared to their own. But when even a strong expert like Qianqian was unable to deal with an enemy, this man actually came to her rescue and saved her life. Not just that, according to what Qianqian said just now, that giant shark was split in half by Yi Xiwen's long blade. Perhaps this was the reason that shocked them the most. Considering Qianqian's diligent and honest character, they had no choice but to believe in what she said. And they were astonished just by thinking about it, because Yi Shiwen was merely at the 2nd stage of Truth Realm, but he actually managed to display the strength beyond the 2nd stage of Truth Realm. No matter how strong he is, this matter is very important. Our lives are going to be at stakes, and it is very difficult to say about the ulterior motives of this man of unknown origin. He may harbor evil intentions. I want to allow him to join our team. Su Yingdao said. Such being the case, I will be on my way then. Yi Shiwen wanted to join Qianqian's team in order to become familiar with some people and watch each other's backs in the face of dangers. But if this team was so unhappy by his presence, then there was no need for him to join their team. After all, just as Su Yingdao said, the most important thing for a team was heartfelt solidarity and cooperation. If he couldn't achieve this by joining this team, then it was better for him to walk his own path. Senior Yi, I think Su Yingdao says this because he doesn't know about Senior Yes tyrannical strength. This was not intentional. Qianqian went forward to persuade Yi Shiwen. but she didn't know that her action and gesture made Su Yingdao feel even more wrong about Yi Shiwen. Firstly, the ulterior motives are not the only issue here. Even his strength seems dubious and questionable. I think that giant shark must have exhausted most of its strength while fighting with Junior Sister Apprentice, which gave him an opportunity to take advantage of this, and that's how he beheaded the giant shark. Su Yingdao said with a look of disdain in his eyes. Qianqian was somewhat anxious. She didn't know what to say, but she did know that the strength of that demon beast was far above the strength of an average human expert. When she herself was at the point of utmost exhaustion and physical exertion, her strength was almost coming to an end, but at that time, the giant shark was radically just warming up. And not to forget that Yi Zaiwen's blade attack was truly outstanding. But since Qianqian has said so much in your favor, then I am ready to give you a chance. If you manage to get out of the block, then I'll agree to accept you in our team. Su Yingdao said in a cold voice. It was obvious that he didn't want Yi Shiwen to join their team. Su Yingdao took one step forward, and his aura firmly locked on Yi Shiwen. He then waved his hand, and suddenly, a tremendous Jin Yuan rolled over towards Yi Shiwen. It seemed as if the empty tie itself was falling towards him. Yi Shiwen was enveloped by Jin Yuan approaching from all directions and instantly trapped him in a giant cage. This showed that Su Yingdao had already practiced the palm method to a very profound level. So you think you can trap me? Yi Shiwen sneered again and again. A moment ago, he was all ready to go, but it seemed like some people didn't want to leave. It was obvious that Su Yingdao was planning to use opportunity to redress personal grievances. He wanted to make Yi Shiwen suffer a loss. He might even try to find a chance and destroy Yi Zaiwen's cultivation. Yi Shiwen could clearly see the killing intention in his eyes. You think you are comparable to that 8th prince? Well, I'd like to see for myself. Yi Shiwen said, then took a step, and suddenly, an unimaginable wave of vigorous Jin Yuan burst out of his body. At this time, his entire accumulated energy was released at once, and a dreadful intention to kill was instantly swept off and firmly enveloped Su Yingdao. Suddenly, Su Yingdao felt a terrifying killing intention aimed at him. It almost washed away his state of mind. It was exceptionally fearful. He had never felt such a horrifying killing intention from a man ever before. But right now, he felt it from Yi Zaiwen's body. He actually did not know that for the last 3 days, Yi Shiwen had been fighting and killing non-stop. He literally hadn't slept for the last 3 days and 3 nights, so one could imagine how many demon beasts had been killed by him during this period. One could say that this ceaseless slaughter had given birth to rivers of blood, and one simply couldn't count the number of demon beasts killed by Yi Shiwen in mere 3 days. Not to mention, many of these demon beasts were at the 3rd stage of Truth Realm, and some were even stronger than that, but he used poisonous dragon water control flag to kill the stronger demon beasts, and at that time, he was just at the 1st stage of Truth Realm. Now, he was at the 2nd stage of Truth Realm, and after the breakthrough, he gained tyrannical strength. Yi Shiwen had to absorb the natans of countless truth-level demon beasts in order to break from 1st stage of Truth Realm to 2nd stage of Truth Realm. So one could imagine the enormous gap between his previous strength and current strength. Yi Zaiwen's inner state is at the 2nd stage, but his strength is comparable to those at 4th stage. Basically, this 2-stage buff is possible because of the energy he has absorbed from the natans of so many truth-level demon beasts. And thanks to Tyrant Body Technique, he can withstand so much excess energy he absorbed from truth-level demon beasts. After killing so many demon beasts, Yi Zaiwen's killing intention could be imagined, but he had to the restraining breath technique to completely hide his killing intention and true strength, because that would have scared away those demon beasts. But now he didn't care and directly released out his true strength and killing intention. Since Sun Yingdao tried to trap in a cage, Yi Shiwen directly aimed his dreadful killing intention at him. Su Yingdao felt as if his entire existence had been pierced. There was no need to say that the monstrous waves of Jin Yuan, released out from Yi Zaiwen's body, instantly defeated Sun Yingdao's Jin Yuan and directly annihilated his cage, then advanced forward and completely enveloped his body. Su Yingdao suddenly came to understand, perhaps, Qianqian was really stating the truth. This Yi Zaiwen's real strength was far beyond his imagination, which shocked not just him, but everyone present on the scene. This fact could shock anyone in this world. It was simply unimaginable that a master at the Truth second stage would actually turn out to possess strength more than Truth third stage. This Yi Shiwen was really a monster. Su Yingdao was at the third stage of Truth realm and had always been referred to as a genius by his peer, but there existed a title above genius as well. It was the title of a monster. A monster was someone whose achievements, skill, and strength could not be measured by the norms and established theories. In the past, he did not believe in the existence of monsters, but now, after meeting Yi Shiwen, he had no choice but to believe that monsters really existed in this world and were fearful experts. I have replaced evildoer by monster. I will continue to use monster in future chapters. Not good. Su Yingdao shouted and took several steps back while using an agility technique, trained to the Acme level. It appeared that he only took a step, but in reality, he withdrew more than 30 feet in a blink of an eye. He was so overwhelmed by Yi Zaiwen's strength and killing intention that he instinctively fled very far away. But at this time, Su Yingdao's entire body was covered in a protective turtle shell, made up of Jin Yuan. It's that turtle shell magical technique. Qianqian recognized the technique used by Su Yingdao. Although the name of this technique sounded quite weird and tacky, but it was considered an extremely superior and secretive power technique by the people of Great Island of the Immortals. There were rumors in the sect of Great Island of the Immortals. They once surrendered a giant turtle beast and studied its super strong shell to obtain this turtle shell magical technique. It had been passed down generation after generation as a secret technique, and after constant improvements, the human race could finally learn to use it. Moreover, the defensive power of this turtle shell magical technique could shock everybody. There simply was no means to eradicate this shell, and once it was displayed, it was that even masters of Truth 4th stage would find it very difficult to destroy it. Qianqian was aware of the strength of turtle shell technique and knew that it was a very powerful defense-type technique. It could easily block the attacks from super experts, so at this time, she was worried for Yi Shiwen. What turtle shell magical technique? Yi Shiwen sneered and simply didn't give much importance to this turtle shell power technique. Yi Shiwen shot his palm, and the loud roar of a dragon resounded in the surroundings. His entire arm transformed into a coiling dragon. It lifted its face upwards and gave a long and loud roar. The coiling dragon instantly disappeared, and the next moment, it appeared in front of Su Yingdao. While facing Yi Zaiwen's coiling dragon palm technique, the turtle shell magical technique simply didn't stand a chance. It was going to collapse from the very first blow. Yi Zaiwen's coiling dragon dropped down from the clouds. There simply was no way for an average person to resist a mighty being like this coiling dragon. One could say that it was the most powerful yang creature in this world. Yang equals positive principle from yin-yang concept. What kind of martial arts is this? Su Yingdao could feel a sense of intense dread crawling under his skin, and his own Jin Yuan seemed to be going out of control. He had never felt like this in his life. This was the feeling of bowing down and worshiping in the face of such a divine and mighty being. This whole situation suddenly sent him in panic-stricken state. How is this possible? He actually did not know that his turtle shell magical technique had been created using a giant turtle as basis, and there was dragon blood present in its blood vessels. So it could be considered as an inferior dragon species with turtle-like characteristics. And when the turtle shell technique was created, it was certainly related in some way with the original dragon techniques, which was the reason why Su Yingdao's Jin Yuan went out of control while he was facing Yi Zaiwen's coiling dragon palm, which was supposedly one of the purest dragon-based techniques. The turtle shell's defensive power was completely crushed by Yi Zaiwen's coiling dragon. Su Yingdao could not bear and immediately gave out a loud shout. Turtle trampling. From the collapsed shell appeared a huge turtle leg and dropped from the sky towards Yi Shiwen to trample him. It was made up from the combination of Zhen Yuan and Ling Qi, and although it was not a real turtle leg, but not far off as well. The other four had shocked looks on their faces. They could clearly see that Su Yingdao was cornered and anxious. so he had to use such a big move in a desperate effort. In the past, he would have never used it unless it was absolutely necessary in most urgent cases, but right now, he had to use it just because he was actually cornered by Yi Shiwen. And Coiling Dragon has scared the crap out of him. Poor guy has no other choice but to use his trump. Besides Qian, others simply couldn't believe that things would actually come to this. Su Yingdao was naturally considered the strongest among them, and they always found him domineering and tyrannical. However, Yi Shiwen just used one move to corner that domineering and tyrannical Su Yingdao. They always used to listen to legendary fairy tales about such experts, but today, someone from those fairy tales appeared in front of them. Qian already knew about this because that giant shark was at the peak of true third stage, and demon beasts were often stronger than humans at same cultivation level. But even so, Yi Shiwen used just one blade attack to behead that giant shark. More importantly, Yi Shiwen killed it so effortlessly, as if it was child's play for him. Such level of skill and capability, such strength and fierceness. He is actually a monster, Qi Fei said with a look of disbelief on his face. Yi Shiwen looked at the turtle leg falling from the sky. It must have the weight of almost 10 million jin, and an average master wouldn't live after being trampled by it. What turtle leg? Fuck off! Yi Shiwen shouted and released more terrifying and vigorous Jin Yuan from his whole body. This scene was simply shocking. The coiling dragon instantly flew towards the turtle leg and directly grasped it in its fierce claws. To be continued. NT. When Yi Shiwen absorbs a Niden, Tianyuan mirror first refines the crude energy, and only the purest form of energy is absorbed by Yi Shiwen. So, just because he has absorbed the nadins of several truth-level demon beasts doesn't mean he should have a breakthrough to next stage. He only absorbs the purest energy from the nadins, which is very less in quantity but very high in quality. Chapter 183. NT. Regular Chapter. 3 more pending regular chapters. Enjoy laughing face. Chapter 183 breaks through the blockade. Yi Xiwen's entire Jinyuan burst out in a flash, and in that moment it seemed like the incarnation of a coiling dragon. Its claws instantly grabbed Su Yingdao's turtle leg, which couldn't sustain the incredible strength present in the claw, and exploded. At this time, Yi Shiwen seemed simply unstoppable to everyone present there. Oh my god, how can a Jinyuan be so profound and vigorous? He is not a human. His strength is so terrifying. The people present on the scene exclaimed. It was simply unimaginable for them to see the profoundness of Yi Xiwen's skill. The Jinyuan burst out from Yi Xiwen's body, pushed them several steps back again and again. Yi Shiwen rushed towards Su Yingdao and directly tore apart the Jinyuan protective cover around his body, and the very next instant, he grabbed Su Yingdao's neck. Senior Yi, please show mercy. At this time, Qian could not wait any longer and finally said. Yi Shiwen heard her voice and loosened his grip. He never intended to use extreme methods, was just taking advantage of this opportunity to stop Sun Yingdao. Yi Shiwen immediately retracted his dragon claw, which disappeared right in front of Su Yingdao. Yi Shiwen activated restraining breath technique, which immediately restrained his terrifying aura and crazily surging Jin Yuan. And after that, now, to everyone, he appeared no different than any other master at the second stage of Truth Realm. However, at this time, Qi Fei and others no longer dared to look down on him. His true strength was really too tyrannical, to such an extent that even Su Yingdao, the strongest in their team, was not a match. In fact, even if all of them joined forces and fight him, they still didn't a chance to put even a scratch on him. Su Yingdao was totally perplexed and didn't speak a single word. When he came to his senses, his complexion immediately turned very unsightly. All he wanted to do was to humiliate Yi Shiwen and show off in front of everyone. But he never thought that Yi Shiwen would actually be so difficult to deal with. He was really a dreadful monster, evildoer. Do you want to continue the test? Yi Shiwen indifferently said, but it sounded like a humiliating satire to Su Yingdao's ears. This was equivalent to giving a direct slap on his face. Damn it, Su Yingdao said in a very angry tone. You think you can insult me just because you are stronger? At the worst, we will perish together. Let's fight to death. Fight to death? And with someone like you? Yi Shiwen said with a disdained look on his face. He immediately understood that this Su Yingdao had some serious character defects. He was so full of himself that he ended up underestimating Yi Shiwen. At first, he tried to humiliate Yi Shiwen, but being a victim, Yi Shiwen retaliated, completely overwhelmed him, and also decided to show mercy. But rather than being sorry for his actions, he reverted with even more powerful roar. Please, you two, don't quarrel. It's time to go to Devil Commander's tomb. Let's give mutual respect to each other and aim for sincere cooperation. Quarreling like this is not good for anyone. At least give me face and forget about this childish feud. At this time, Chi Fei stepped out to smooth things out. I will give face to Brother Chi Fei, Yi Shiwen lightly said. Su Yingdao looked at Chi Fei and other team members, and judging from their facial expressions, he understood that every one of his team members was going to speak the same words as Chi Fei. He immediately snorted and turned around without saying anything. In fact, even if Qianqian and the other members of his team were in favor of his decision of fighting Yi Shiwen to death, and even if they ganged up on him, it was simply impossible for them to take him down. Yi Shiwen was an incredibly strong guy, and it was not worthwhile to make enemies with such a guy. Not to mention, this time, considering the great caliber of Yi Shiwen, he could be treated as a very strong addition to their team, so no one was against Qianqian's decision to let him join. It was Su Yingdao's selfish motive to show off in front of everyone which ended up this way. Now Su Yingdao not only resented Yi Shiwen, he also felt uncomfortable and envious because of the presence of Yi Shiwen in their team. After everyone was prepared to set off, they discussed for a while, then flew towards the depths of great immortal battlefield. Since all of them were truth-level masters and knew excellent agility techniques, their speed was extremely fast. Yi Shiwen was flying at a moderate pace behind the entire team. Qianqian flew over to Yi Shiwen and said with a somewhat sorry look on her face, I'm sorry, Senior Yi. I did not expect this to happen. It's all because of my thoughtlessness. Relax, it doesn't matter. Yi Shiwen smiled and said, Yi Shiwen, this time in Devil Commander's grave, I am afraid that you are going to face very troublesome situations. Moreover, this team only has Masters of Truth 3rd stage, and no one knows what kind of master will make an appearance on the way. Yimo said, I know. Even I think that this task is going to be very dangerous. We may encounter Masters of Half-Step Legendary Realm. Those invincible Masters of Legendary Realm may also have come for the treasure. But even so, we don't have other choice. Yi Shiwen said, 3 months. In just 3 months' time, we must face the 8th prince, so if my strength is not enough, then I will most likely be killed by him. Yi Shiwen was sure that 8th prince didn't just plan to defeat him. He most likely wanted to kill Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen had gathered information about 8th prince from many sources, and judging from all that information, he had come to know that 8th prince was not a friendly guy and definitely lacked empathy. He was an ambitious man, and his one and only aim was to stay at the top above everyone else. Although right now, Yi Shiwen was not his opponent, but had enough potential to surpass him in the future. If the 8th prince considered Yi Shiwen as a genuine enemy, then rather than waiting for months for the duel, the best way would have been to strangle the enemy in the cradle. 3 months later, whether I am willing or not, there's no way to stop the showdown between me and 8th prince. Yi Shiwen said because he absolutely had no choice but to participate in the duel. It was beyond his control. The 8th prince had put him in this pressuring situation, and he could escape. So by all means, he must enhance his strength in the next 3 months period. It was the only way out of this situation. It's the Devil Commander's tomb. Considering the level and status of such an incredible master, even half-step legendary and legendary level masters would drool over the treasures left behind by him. So it's natural that I'm going to see. Yi Shiwen firmly said. Yi Shiwen and other people soon arrived at great immortal ancient battlefield. However, it was no longer the same as it used to be just a few days ago when Yi Shiwen was mindlessly slaughtering demon beasts. Right now, the whole area had been blockaded by demon beasts. Innumerable demon beasts had formed a blockade and were blocking up the seawater. At first glance, All sorts of strange and unusually demon beasts were visible in the blockade. In addition to Yi Shiwen, Qianqian and her team, a lot of other teams were also lingering outside the blockade line and simply could break past. Lowly humans, you better quickly retreat. We have been ordered to form this blockade by our king. You humans are not allowed to go any further. At this time, a huge old mossback turtle said in a loud voice. Shameless, they usually don't form blockade like this, but now that they have obtained the news about Devil Commander's tomb, they actually formed this blockade. How outrageous. But what should we do now? These demon beasts seem powerful. Needless to say, this number is very scary. From this far, it is hard to guess. Maybe there are 1,000 or 10,000 and all of them are truth-level masters. Mere the sight of so many truth-level demon beasts is scary. Yi Shiwen was wondering about the reason behind this. There was an underwater kingdom of demon beasts, which was located at the boundary line of Great Immortal Battlefield. So the news about Devil Commander's tomb not only attracted many human masters, it also alarmed the Demon Beast Kingdom. These demon beasts from the Demon Beast Kingdom looked really tough and intrepid. Therefore, the human forces could not go further into the East China Sea and could at most occupy some nearby islands. Although there were a lot of demon beasts maintaining the blockade, but one must know that this was not the complete strength of Demon Beast Kingdom. These filthy animals don't stand a chance against us. While everybody was still considering what to do, Su Yingdao suddenly shouted. He was still pissed at Yi Shiwen, and it seemed like he was going to vent up his anger on these demon beasts. After that, he launched an attack towards the blockade of demon beasts. He released a turtle-shaped Zhen Yuan, which instantly rushed towards a demon beast of truth first stage and exploded, and the next instant he rushed through the opening. Yi Shiwen and the other team members did not get a chance to stop him from being reckless. They also immediately rushed inside. Suddenly, Su Yingdao's action caused a chain reaction, and several other teams began to attack the defense line of demon beasts. Many strong teams directly broke through the blockade of demon beasts, but there were several weak teams that couldn't manage to break through and were killed after getting trapped in the barrage of endless attacks from demon beasts. Yi Zaiwen's team was certainly very strong. They instantly rushed past the blockade. Su Yingdao was being tyrannical through and through. He was naturally somewhat emboldened. This was a team comprising of several truth third-stage masters, and their team could be considered as a very formidable team. They directly swept inside without facing much difficulty. Yi Shiwen also following from behind, because many warriors were rushing in from all sides, so he did not need to withstand all of the attacks. Only a part of it, which was not a serious problem at his current strength. However, Yi Shiwen still didn't have a shred of relaxation, because he tried to sense and cultivation levels of the demon beasts present in this area, but he couldn't sense strong demon beasts. He couldn't find the trace of demon beasts at first stage of Truth Realm or above. A huge demon beast kingdom was supposed to be located nearby. Then why weren't the fifth stage demon beasts or above present in this area? The only explanation for this could be that the higher level demon beasts had already entered the Devil Commander's tomb, and a large number of strong experts must have been deployed. That's why he couldn't sense strong demon beasts. Although this was the case, but getting past the blockade of thousands of truth-level demon beasts was not a simple matter. However, thanks to the well-timed coordination and unusual tacit understanding between Su Yingdao and the other team members, helped the entire team in safely rushing in towards the core area of Great Immortal Battlefield. And Yi Shiwen used his poisonous dragon water control flag array to shield himself, and basically went on rampage all the way. After flying for nearly an hour, only few teams managed to reach the core region of Great Immortal Battlefield. But after approaching the core region, suddenly, they began to encounter stronger demon beasts. Mostly, Truth First Stage and Second Stage demon beasts were present on the periphery of Great Immortal Battlefield, but the strength of demon beasts increased considerably once they reached the core region. Here, even the weakest demon beast was at the third stage of Truth Realm. However, only a handful of them were present there. They were very less in numbers when compared to thousands of demon beasts on the periphery. Otherwise, even if Su Yingdao's team was strong, they would still die miserably. In the sky, occasionally formidable masters of truth 5th stage or above could be seen directly diving into the sea. The Devil Commander's tomb had finally arrived, and it was located deep inside the sea. To be continued. Chapter 184. T. Regular chapter. 2 more pending. Chapter 184. Bones of the dead everywhere. Everyone looked at each other, nodded, and dived into the seawater. They covered themselves in the protective layer of Zhen Yuan. Yi Shiwen was the only one who used the soul guard of Deepwater Black Serpent because it could help him in breathing freely in the deep waters, just like breathing on the land. The people dived all the way, and actually at this time, one could also see that the fight was going on between many demon beasts and human warriors. Many human warriors had already arrived here, and many of them were fighting alone. Plus, all of them were at Truth 5th stage or above, the reason why they were able to handle so many demon beasts vertically and horizontally. Although right now, Yi Shiwen was part of a team like many other teams present there. Of course, he was capable enough to be on his own, and he would still be able to deal with demon beasts. But in the end, he was unfamiliar with the location of tomb, hence could go his own way, otherwise he wouldn't know where to dive. After diving all the way, in the midway, they encountered many horrifying Truth 5th stage demon beasts. The good news was that Yi Shiwen would generally sense and discover them from afar, and everyone would pick up speed. That's how they were able to avoid Truth 5th stage demon beasts. At this time, Su Yingdao and the others had a faint idea emerging in their hearts that they should never have come here. In this place, terrifying demon beasts of Truth 5th stage or above were present everywhere. Never in their wild dreams had they ever expected to see so many terrifying demon beasts at one place. They simply didn't stand a chance, even against one of these fearful demon beasts, and there were so many of them. After they had a small half-hour dive, they finally explored the seabed, but what they saw was a horrible sight. The surrounding seabed area in the radius of thousands of miles was covered in endless bones of the dead, camouflaging the entire seabed. These bones of the dead actually belonged to all those supreme masters and demon beast races, which were killed by the Devil Commander in his lifetime. Sadly, even the souls of these masters had been detained by the Devil Commander above the bones of the dead. They had to suffer endless torment generation after generation and simply couldn't go into the cycle of rebirth. They were forced by the Devil Commander to go through this eternal suffering, and one could easily feel the lurking, extremely frightening breath everywhere. After the Devil Commander was dead, these bones of the dead paved his mausoleum, guarding his corpse for millenniums, years after years, for God knows how many years. Everyone who watched this scene suddenly gasped and held their breaths. This was just too horrible. And in these bones of the dead, occasionally some of the bones would condense into humanoid shapes or into the shapes of various demon beasts. These demon beasts or human masters once used to be the powerhouses, who were later beheaded by the Devil Commander. The bones of the dead had been able to maintain the magical powers from the times when they were alive. This was extremely frightening. At the very first glance, Yi Shiwen was able to guess that some of these bones of the dead belonged to the masters who must have died before the Devil Invasion era. But now, even they had been driven by Devil Commander to show their graceful obligation. Hence he could sense wild screams everywhere. These were the heroes who paid their lives in order to resist against the devils. So now, they should not be treated like this. Even after death, they had been compelled by Devil Commander to work for him. Yi Shiwen thought this and felt his heart getting filled with grief and indignation. As he was approaching, he could clearly feel wails everywhere. The grievances and resentment were monstrous. Hate, hate, hate. I wish someone would obliterate devils from this world. I resent, resent, resent. I died before my troops could attain victory. In a flash, the melancholy and resent of so many dead masters wholeheartedly influx into Yi Ziwen's mind. However, Chi Fei and other team members didn't show much concern to this. However, Yi Shiwen felt his heart being filled with anger, as if he was like a magnet, attracting endless sadness from all directions, flooding directly towards Yi Shiwen. These grievances, resentments, when accumulated in larger concentrations, could actually distort the space. In other words, this cemetery had actually passed through years after years for ages despite having the distortion in space. Since the space distortion had been going on for ages, it was already regarded as a half-plane, and it was not possible to directly pass through it. They must break open the space and go through the opening to the tomb. Generally speaking, only the masters of legendary realm were able to break open spaces, but obviously, this half-plane had a very unstable space, so it was easier to break it open. But even so, a truth-level master was still needed in order to break this half-plane and make the opening for enough time to go through it. Yi Shiwen direct rushed down, having the intense feeling in his heart to break this space open. He suddenly gave a loud shout and chopped out his long blade, which made a crack in the space, and he immediately entered the space from where the cracks appeared. Suddenly, an even more bizarre and cold aura than before swept towards him. The cold and cloudy machi was wanton, flowing everyone. Everyone's complexion changed slightly. It was obvious that the presence of machi in the surroundings was making them uncomfortable. NT, machi equals devilki. Only Yi Shiwen was the exception. Not only he did not feel uncomfortable. On the contrary, by performing conversion using Tianyuan mirror, Yi Shiwen could absorb the machi present in the cold aura, spreading a very comfortable feeling throughout his body. Because of the heavy concentration of machi in the surroundings, it was basically impossible for everyone to use Soul Search. Even if they tried to use Soul Search, it would be directly swallowed by the machi, covered with resentments. Yi Shiwen was the only exception. He was not afraid of his Soul Search being swallowed by those resentment-covered machi. Since his Tianyuan mirror had an inbuilt restraining function on anything related to the devils, including machi. But when Yi Shiwen used Soul Search, he discovered that it was impossible to completely investigate the entire stretch of tomb. However, Yi Shiwen and the other team members did not dare to approach the bones of the dead, spread everywhere on the seafloor. So they could only float above. Looking at the bones of the dead everywhere on the seafloor, the hearts of everyone had a kind of chilling feeling. Even if numerous years had passed, these bones were still exuding a jade-like gloss. It appeared sacred and flawless. These bones also indicated that it didn't matter how terrifying and peerless those experts would have been back in those days when they were alive, but they still actually died at the hands of the Devil Commander. Moreover, from the sheer quantity of bones of the dead, one could make a guess how terrifying that Devil Commander must be when he was alive. But even so, despite being so tyrannical, the Devil Commander was now dead. He couldn't escape death. A lifetime of fame and glory certainly couldn't save him from death, but one could certainly say that he must have been strong to unimaginable proportions. As everyone was overwhelmed from the scene present in front of their eyes, suddenly, a violent fluctuation of dead chi took place beneath the piles of bones of the dead, and a skull and nearby bones instantly condensed into a human form, with a bone sword in his hand, and immediately chopped out a terrifying sword ki towards Yi Shiwen. The figure of a dragon immediately congealed out of Yi Shiwen's body and directly skimming out towards the incoming sword ki. It didn't take even an instant for the coiling dragon to grab the sword ki in its claws and then completely crushed it. Yi Shiwen did not hesitate and immediately chopped out his long blade, releasing an enormous bladiki towards that skeleton. Bang! Bladiki rushed unobstructed and collided into the bones of the dead. The very next instant, the sound of breaking bones was heard by everyone present on the scene. Actually, some of the bones of that skeleton immediately cracked upon Yi Shiwen's attack, but it was still not defeated. Everyone was astonished at this scene. They could feel that although it was only a simple blade attack, but the power contained in it was not small, but still could not destroy that skeleton warrior. This indicated that he was too strong and tough. The extent of toughness of these bones is really reaching the point exaggeration. I am afraid before death. This skeleton warrior was absolutely an invincible master of Truth 7th or 8th stage. Chi Fei said with an incredible look in his eyes. Even in a major sect like Yuan School, the invincible masters of Truth 7th or 8th stage were considered among the small number of top elites. But here, there was actually a dense crowd of such invincible masters everywhere. I will help you in getting to the other side, Yi Shiwen lightly said. Even after death, this skeleton warrior was being manipulated, had become someone else's watchdog. This was such a sad thing. Yi Shiwen chopped out his long blade once again, and in a flash, 9 blade shadows appeared out of nowhere and rushed towards the skeleton warrior and crashed into his body, breaking his body into multiple fragments. These bone fragments crumbled and fell on the seafloor, while at the same time, the dark, evil spirit hidden in the skeleton was also instantly beheaded by Yi Shiwen. Obviously, the reason behind the existence of these evil spirits was due to the contamination of souls by the presence of endless machi in the surroundings, giving rise to wisdom, but with only killing instinct. These were the so-called evil spirits. Even on the remains of some of the formidable powerhouses, the born evil spirits would recover a portion of the memory from their past lives, and hence could put forth the magical powers from the past as well. If their team was to encounter the evil spirit on the bones of an evildoer monster, it would simply be a dead end for them. According to the map, the Devil Commander's tomb is located somewhere in the central areas of this place, covered in the bones of the dead. Chi Fei took out the map, inspected for a while, and said, "Right now, we are only at the periphery and still encountered such terrifying dangers. If we continue to go deeper towards the central areas, we may encounter formidable enemies, and dealing with them may be beyond our own capacities. Now that I made this clear to everyone, if you don't want to go, now is the time to quit." However, everyone was silent for a moment. No one wanted to quit. After all, they already arrived after facing so many difficulties, and if they quit at this time, it would be really aggrieving and depressing. Moreover, they were a proud and arrogant team of elites. How could they possibly accept such an outcome? Since no one wanted to quit they didn't continue to delay and immediately resumed the journey to the tomb. On the way, they encountered other warrior teams and lone warriors as well, but since everyone was in a hurry, there was no intersection. Along the way, they once again encountered an attack from skeleton from the bones of the dead. This attacking skeleton seemed to be made up of jade crystal, indicating that most probably, during his lifetime, he was a powerhouse at an extremely profound level. But now, there is no awareness left in him. He had simply become someone's slave. But nevertheless, this dead powerhouse, although now only a skeleton, was still very difficult to deal with. Later, Yi Shiwen shot less and less. Generally, whenever he attacked, it was always the last shot because he already noticed the killing intention in Su Yingdao's eyes. He was repeatedly redirecting the attacks from the skeletons towards Yi Shiwen, but Yi Shiwen was strong enough to resist. But Yi Shiwen also slowly began to reduce the number of attacks on skeletons and focused more on being wary of Su Yingdao. To be continued, dash. Chapter 185. NT. Regular chapter. One more pending. Enjoy. Chapter 185. Schemes and Tricks Yi Shiwen. It seems this Su Yingdao bears deep hatred for you and wants to kill you. Yi Mo said, being a spirit himself, he was very sensitive to these things. He is courting death, but right now I do not have any information regarding the exact location of Devil Commander Tomb, so I need to depend on whatever information they have. But if Su Yingdao dared to cause trouble for me, then I'll directly kill him, Yi Shiwen lightly said in his heart. Anyway, he had concealed his true appearance and wasn't afraid of being hunted down by the people of Great Island of Immortals if they found out that he killed their disciple. Even if they found out Great Island of Immortals was too far away from Yuan School, and now he was going to be the official true disciple of Yuan School. Earlier, when he killed Luo Tian, he had to be careful and didn't want others to find out that he killed Luo Tian. But now, even if they found out that it was actually him who killed Luo Tian, the sect wouldn't allow anyone to lay their hands on Yi Shiwen, because when compared to a truth-level master like him, Luo Tian was simply an ant-like existence. Not to mention, everyone knew about the reason why Luo Tian was killed, because he tried to defile and kill Hua Minghan by poisoning her. He basically deserved to die. At present, Su Yingdao was simply not in his eyes, because Yi Shiwen was fully focused on his battle with the peerless and exquisite 8th Prince, 3 months from now. Yi Shiwen, These are many evil spirits in the piles of bones of the dead. These evil spirits have taken birth slowly and gradually over periods of long time. And to be honest, these evil spirits are the source of trouble for others. But for you, they are nothing but nourishments. Yemo said, because these evil spirits take birth from Machi, they can definitely be completely transformed by Tianyuan mirror. When Yi Shiwen heard this, his eyes suddenly shone brightly, because now he would be able to have a rapid progress in strength by leaps and bounds in the shortest time, since he was going to use all of the evil spirits present in these piles of bones as nourishments. After thinking of this, Yi Shiwen suddenly displayed a much more positive attitude than before. He even directly rushed to the front of the team and went all the way to open up a path through the bones. The evil spirits that dared to block his way simply weren't his opponents and were directly beheaded by him, then were completely transformed by Tianyuan mirror and absorbed by Yi Shiwen. As Yi Shiwen continued the absorption, his cultivation was constantly rising simultaneously, and most importantly, some of these evil spirits had regained some of the memories of their past lives, including the martial arts memories, which were also absorbed by Yi Shiwen. The mysterious space was constantly working inside his mind and unceasingly comprehending and analyzing the influx of endless information which was being constantly absorbed by him. Thanks to this, his martial arts experience also began to rise, greatly benefiting him in the process. Various aspects of martial arts experience was contained in the memories absorbed by Yi Shiwen. Among the absorbed evil spirits, many of them were at legendary realm powerhouses, and their martial arts experience was strong. Although it was only a word or two, only the lamella of fingernail, but regarding Yi Shiwen, it was actually the best supplement, as right now his cultivation was increasing constantly due to this. Some of the martial arts experiences were not so comprehensive for him earlier, but now, all of gaps in his experience was being filled up unceasingly. Although each of these evil spirits might hold a little bit of memory, but as Yi Shiwen continued to kill, God knows how many thousand skeletons were beheaded by him, and all of these small martial arts experiences, when added up, contributed a considerable overall martial arts experience to him. Yi Ziwen's aura was slowly changing and becoming more and more stable. This was the realm of sublimation. After those skeletons didn't have evil spirits anymore, suddenly the resentment attached to them also dispersed. These resentments were strongly concentrated on top of the evil spirits, but now that the evil spirits were beheaded by Yi Shiwen, the resentful souls could also finally rest in peace. Because Yi Shiwen continued to encounter these skeletons all the way as they were trying to block his path, and it was simply impossible to guess how many of these skeletons present in the piles of bones of the dead. There was an infinite view of endless piles of skeletons spread in all direction, and as far as the eyesight would go, there was no end to them. They were on move for a full 3 days and nights, and finally, Yi Shiwen and the team arrived in the central region of the bones of the dead. They were encountering sierras of bone piles, one after another, continuously on the seabed. Although only 3 days passed, but almost all the time, the whole team was fighting non-stop. Su Yingdao and other team members also saw considerable promotions in their respective strengths, especially Su Yingdao and Chu Fei, who were now almost on the verge of breaking through to the Truth Fourth stage. Talking about enhancement in strength, naturally Yi Shiwen was the winner among them, since he experienced the most promotion in his strength. He had only recently stepped into the Truth Second stage, but this time, with the rapid progress, he was able to reach the peak of Truth Second stage, and now his strength was comparable to the Masters at the peak of Truth Fourth stage. This was the case when he was unarmed, but if would use Poisonous Dragon Water Control Flag, then he could easily compete with even more powerful Masters. Moreover, the martial arts experience obtained from the evil spirits was completely digested by Yi Shiwen, and after thorough absorption, Yi Shiwen was able to reach a very high level of understanding of martial arts. Even in some places, the level of his understanding could match with the legendary realm characters. A variety of martial science and secret techniques came in real handy, and Yi Shiwen also deduced the third move of Coiling Dragon Palm. Yi Shiwen named its secret rain clouds, and when he shot his palm, a large shadow of his palm enveloped the entire area. This method was simply overwhelming and impenetrable, to the point that it was impossible for any attack-type technique to match its level. It belonged to one of the secret offensive and defensive-type attacking techniques. And this time, Yi Shiwen was able to comprehend it after repeatedly deducing the experiences besieged from several peerless masters. An offensive and defensive-type attack technique could perform both offensive and defensive functions, and using secret rain clouds, Yi Shiwen was able to considerably speed up the beheadings of skeletons. It could even be said that he was basically sweeping them away. Those evil spirits simply had no way to resist against Yi Shiwen and were being crushed in abundance by him. At the current level of Yi Ziwen's cultivation, he was only one small step away from stepping into the true third stage. As long as he managed to have a breakthrough once again, his fighting strength would increase by leaps and bounds. The speed of growth in Yi Ziwen's breath was almost visible to naked eyes. Although every time, after leaking out a little bit of breath, he would immediately cover it up, but Su Yingdao and the other were still aware that Yi Ziwen's progressive speed was extremely horrifying. Originally, Yi Ziwen's strength was terrifying enough of terror, but they never thought that his rate of progress was ever more terrifying. Each time he killed a skeleton, his breath would become more powerful. In this way, perhaps no could stop him from becoming exponentially stronger with each kill. Listen everyone, we turn left here, then there's only about 100 miles to arrive at the destination. At this time, Su Yingdao opened his mouth and said, "This is a shortcut. An ancestor of my sect once passed through there. Yi Shiwen, since you're the one who leads us each time, so this time you again go first and explore this route for us." Su Yingdao said. Everyone nodded and did not feel anything odd about it. After all, Su Yingdao was a disciple of Great Island of Immortals, so it should be normal if he knew any shortcuts. Since it was the place where the demon beast kingdom once contended with the Great Island of Immortals, which ultimately formed this ancient battlefield. Yi Shiwen went towards the shortcut pointed out by Su Yingdao, but after having covered some distance, Yi Shiwen abruptly stopped, turned around, and looked coldly at Su Yingdao. "Why did you stop?" Su Yingdao asked, while everyone also looked somewhat strangely at Yi Shiwen. "So you want to kill me?" Yi Shiwen coldly said. "You're talking nonsense?" For an instant, a startled look flashed on Su Yingdao's face, then immediately restored to a calm expression, as he coldly replied. "Senior Yi, what's this all about?" Qianqian asked. "He wants to lure me into the ambush of a formidable skeleton." Yi Shiwen coldly stared at Su Yingdao and said, "How is this even possible?" Su Yingdao naturally didn't acknowledge Yi Ziwen's accusation. "I see. Since there is no problem, then you go first and lead the way," Yi Shiwen indifferently said. Su Yingdao's complexion immediately turned unsightly. He certainly knew about the danger down this path. "You are making false accusations. You think that I don't know? There's a terrifying skeleton monster up ahead," Yi Shiwen said coldly. "As soon as I approach him, I'm afraid it will be a dead end for me." How do you know about that?" Su Yingdao asked in a startled manner. He knew that his scheme had been seen through by Yi Shiwen, but he was more frightened because he didn't know how his plot was discovered by Yi Shiwen. At the end of this path, there was a peerless skeleton monster. An ancestor of his sect had once taken this path and had ended up fighting with this peerless skeleton monster. But how did Yi Shiwen find out about this? Yi Shiwen sneered. How could he not know about this? Others were unable to use soul search in this place piled up with the bones of the dead, so they were basically unable to sense what was awaiting them in the distance. But Yi Shiwen was able to use soul search, and hence could easily sense any formidable skeleton masters from afar. Although his soul search could not go very far, but enough to sense that there was a terrifying skeleton monster ahead, hidden in the mountain of bones. Even the slightest fluctuations in the aura among the bones of the dead would alert Yi Shiwen. For Yi Shiwen, this was not at all difficult, and just because he could use soul search, he could always sense danger from far away. So, he could quietly avoid some of the more dangerous skeleton monster-infested areas. This was how they smoothly arrived here with Yi Shiwen in the lead. Su Yingdao wanted to use this trick to overcast Yi Shiwen, but it was actually discovered by Yi Shiwen. Su Yingdao was a conniving guy. If there was no absolute assurance to his success, he would never have put his plan into motion. Earlier, When he discovered that Yi Shiwen was extremely formidable, he was waiting patiently to put his plan into action at the right time. Also on the way, he would occasionally provoke Yi Shiwen using random methods, making Yi Shiwen think that Su Yingdao was only capable of using small means and nothing else. This time, the plan to use that terrifying skeleton monster to eliminate Yi Shiwen was supposed to be completely safe and foolproof. But who knew that it would actually be seen through by Yi Shiwen so easily? Therefore, the shock was completely exposed on his face, because he couldn't accept the face that Yi Shiwen had seen through his supposedly perfect plan. Yi Shiwen, this guy actually plotted to kill you. We absolutely cannot let him off. Yi Mo said, I have repeatedly tolerated you, but never thought that you will go so far as to plot against me. You leave me no choice. Yi Shiwen sneered, and his figure instantly moved. To be continued. Chapter 186. NT. Regular chapter. No more pending chapters. I did it. Now I can focus on this week's regular releases. Enjoy. Laughing face. Chapter 186. Su Yingdao beheaded. I have repeatedly tolerated you, but never thought that you will go so far as to plot against me. You leave me no choice. Yi Shiwen sneered, and his figure instantly moved. However, Su Yingdao's reaction time was also not slow. It could be said that he already wanted to fight with Yi Shiwen, especially since now his plan had been exposed to Yi Shiwen. Su Yingdao wanted to make the first move to gain advantage and ultimately kill Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen, you are too arrogant. You think I will forget everything and let you off? Su Yingdao coldly said. No one has ever dared to humiliate me. Today is the day you die. A small pagoda appeared in Su Yingdao's hand and began to spin violently, then started getting bigger and bigger, and suddenly, a horrifying spiritual pressure instantly pressed towards Yi Shiwen. It was actually a top-grade spiritual tool. No wonder he was so confident in plotting against Yi Shiwen, so it turned out to be this. This spirit tool, named Jinyao Pagoda, has been specifically refined for me by my sex elder. In front of it, even the so-called evildoers are helpless. They could just stay with their hands tied and wait to be captured. Su Yingdao laughed insolently while the Jinyao Pagoda was getting bigger and bigger in his hands, and soon it looked just like an iron tower, then instantly pressed down towards Yi Shiwen. NT. Jinyao equals to drive away the evil spirits. Under the influence of the enormous and mighty breath released from the pagoda, the skeletons of those demon beast powerhouses began trembling because the Jinyao Pagoda itself was suppressed them. And the reason why they showed reaction at this time was due to the restraining function of pagoda. Boom! The whole Jinyao Pagoda directly suppressed towards Yi Shiwen, and he was completely submerged in its terrifying spiritual pressure. After Yi Shiwen was completely suppressed down, innumerable bones of the dead were also crushed into the sea floor by the spiritual pressure. Ha ha ha, dead, he is dead! Su Yingdao's face revealed a grim look. There was a carefree feeling in his heart, the same feeling one would get after killing a powerful enemy. As the muddy water dispersed, the Jinyao Pagoda also flew up, but everyone actually saw Yi Shiwen standing proudly among the muddy water, as if the suppression of Jinyao Pagoda had no effect on him whatsoever. Why are you not dead? Su Yingdao was suddenly startled and just couldn't believe his eyes. The suppression attack of his Jinyao Pagoda was strong enough to easily kill even the Masters of Truth 4th stage with one shot. But how could it possibly have no effect on Yi Shiwen? As if someone like you can kill me, Yi Shiwen sneered. A moment ago, he immediately used Tianyuan Mirror to shield his body. Otherwise, the suppression from the varying spiritual pressure of a top-grade spiritual tool, if not kill or cripple him, could have injured him. This was the reason why Su Yingdao was so confident, but as long as Yi Shiwen had Tianyuan Mirror to protect him, he could easily deal with Jinyao Pagoda. Now it was crystal clear that Su Yingdao was dead set on killing him. He simply didn't conceal the killing intention boiling in his heart for Yi Shiwen. At this time, Qianqian and the other team members were carefully observing the battle. They never expected that the things would evolve so fast and take such a form. Although they held a tacit coordination with their teammate, Su Yingdao, but after working with Yi Shiwen in the same team for the last few days, they developed good impression of Yi Shiwen in their hearts. After all these days, Yi Shiwen had been killing all the formidable skeleton monsters which could be considered as a big help for them. It could be said that without Yi Shiwen, they simply wouldn't have safely come this far. This was indeed the fact, because if Yi Shiwen hadn't taken up the role of Pathfinder for the team, then would have bumped into skeletons much stronger than them. And considering their strength, they would probably be wiped out by now, let alone arriving here unharmed. Therefore, the battle between Yi Shiwen and Su Yingdao was giving a kind of helpless feeling to everyone. They did not know whose side they should take. "You are courting death." Su Yingdao suddenly turned even more furious and suppressed down Jinyao Pagoda towards Yi Shiwen. "You should probably give up now." Yi Shiwen sneered and instantly opened the devil's wings on his back, then suddenly arrived in front of Su Yingdao. Su Yingdao was suddenly alarmed, because he did not think that Yi Shiwen would actually use such a method. The devil wings granted him unimaginable speed, and thanks to that, he instantly escaped from the repression of Jinyao Pagoda and arrived in front of Su Yingdao. Yi Shiwen shot his palm, releasing a terrifying aura, and along with it, echoed the loud roar of a dragon in the surroundings. It seemed as if the heavens suddenly caved in and instantly suppressed towards Su Yingdao. Su Yingdao stepped forward to greet this attack with his own fist, and a fierce collision took place. Boom! The two attacks collided and resulted into a terrifying explosion, which instantly evaporated endless amount of seawater. Even countless bones of the dead were blown away. Poof! Su Yingdao spurted out a mouthful of blood, and his whole stature continually drew back several steps. How could his average palm technique possibly beat Coiling Dragon Palm's first move, Hidden Dragon Rises from the Abyss? When Yi Shiwen used this move, it's true, might manifest itself magnificently, even in the deep sea. Why are you guys not helping me? Cannot you see this man is not human? He is a devil. Let's kill him, and we will receive massive rewards from Outsex. Su Yingdao was not thinking rationally. At this time, he was quite afraid that he was actually not the opponent of Yi Shiwen, so he was trying to seek help from Qianqian and the others. However, these people weren't fools that they would unnecessarily attack Yi Shiwen. It was not hard to imagine that if an evildoer or monster like Yi Shiwen managed to escape, then they could basically consider themselves as dead from today onwards. Not to mention, they could clearly see that Yi Shiwen was not a devil, although the pair of wings appeared to be some kind of devil arts-based magical technique. But this was nothing. After all, they also had their own secrets. Also, Su Yingdao himself was a practitioner of some turtle demon beast power technique. It did not matter, because it was not possible to prove whether Yi Shiwen was a devil or not. "Today you are going to die. Nobody can save you," Yi Shiwen said in a cold voice. The huge amounts of Zhenyuan instantly burst out of Yi Ziwen's body, and just like the mighty ocean waves, it overran towards Su Yingdao. His whole body, just like a falling meteor, rushed towards Su Yingdao at an incredibly fast speed. "If you want me dead, I'll pull you down with me," Su Yingdao said with a violent look in his eyes. This man was a ruthless man and was actually willing to go as far as die together with Yi Shiwen. "I'm afraid you won't get a chance." Yi Shiwen gave out a loud shout. An ominous look flashed in Su Yingdao's eyes. He took a step forward, and his imposing aura was completely released out of his body. The Zhenyuan transformed into a turtle and rushed towards Yi Shiwen to trample him. Yi Shiwen didn't have the slightest fear, as he instantly blasted Coiling Dragon Palm towards the turtle. The Coiling Dragon severely collided with the turtle. Yi Ziwen's Coiling Dragon instantly opened its big mouth and swallowed down the turtles. Su Yingdao immediately spouted blood, while he was sent flying far away by Yi Shiwen. But right when his blood came in contact with the Jinyao Pagoda, it seemed as if the pagoda was suddenly stimulated by the blood, and it began to spin rapidly, immediately focusing its suppression pressure on Yi Shiwen. "Yi Shiwen, die!" Su Yingdao shouted while a cruel smile appeared on his face. "You think you could suppress me? Dream on? Yi Shiwen thundered loudly and immediately shot his palm, releasing boundless power and influence which finally blasted into the Jinyao Pagoda. Jinyao Pagoda was spinning unceasingly, and because of the suppression's spiritual pressure, it was nearly impossible for Yi Shiwen to approach it. But at this time, his poisonous dragon water control flag suddenly began to revolving around his body, sending out deep-water black serpents one after another, who severely pounded on the Jinyao Pagoda. Kara! 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 Yi Zaiwen's attacks blasted on the rugged Jinyao Pagoda, and several cracks appeared on its structure. Tianyuan Mirror! Yi Shiwen shouted, and Tianyuan Mirror flew out from his body, shone brightly, and released scarlet-colored virtual shadow of an invincible emperor, while his terrifying aura scattered out. It seemed as if this scarlet virtual shadow was looking at this world. He lifted his face upward and gave out a long and loud roar. Then his punch fiercely blasted, directly on the Jinyao Pagoda, which suddenly cracked upon the impact. The owner of this scarlet virtual shadow was no ordinary person. It was actually the image of the former master of Tianyuan Mirror. Of course, at Yi Zaiwen's current strength could congeal only a millionth part of the real strength of the original owner, but it already shocked everybody present on the scene. However, whenever Yi Shiwen used Tianyuan Mirror and put forth this move, almost every time, more than 10,000 top Great Spirit Stones were consumed in the process. But this ultra-high consumption, in exchange, granted greatly strengthened battle efficiency. Even the Jinyao Pagoda, along with its varying spiritual pressure, actually exploded with a loud bang. Poof! But at this time, Su Yingdao spouted a mouthful of blood. His Jinyao Pagoda was defeated, and he directly fainted from the impact. Yi Shiwen didn't plan to spare him. He immediately opened the devil wings. In any case, he had already resorted to devil wings moments ago and didn't mind others to see them. He instantly arrived in front of Su Yingdao, and simultaneously, a big hand congealed out of nowhere and tore apart the protective layer of Zhen Yuan from Su Yingdao's body and rumbled into his body. Bang! With a loud noise, the flesh and blood spattered everywhere. Su Yingdao was directly grasped in Yi Zaiwen's claw and immediately died. The other 4 team members were totally stunned when this scene suddenly unfolded in front of their eyes. In such a short period of time, right in front of their eyes, Su Yingdao was directly crushed in Yi Zaiwen's claw. He simply didn't have the strength to fight back and was ultimately killed. Yi Zaiwen's strength was really enormous, almost unimaginable and shocking in general. Su Yingdao is now dead. If a sect inquires about it, you can freely push it on me, Yi Shiwen indifferently said. He was not afraid. Anyway, his appearance was false. So the great island of immortals could investigate all they want. They would never find out about his true identity. Of course not. Su Yingdao was killed and eaten by a terrifying demon beast in the sea. At this time, Chi Fei said, as he knew that Yi Shiwen was definitely not someone he could mess with. In any case, Su Yingdao was now dead, so why not do a favor to an evildoer, monster, like Yi Shiwen? Indeed, indeed, everyone said, one after another in succession. And this time, Yi Shiwen looked at them and said, such being the case, I will not continue to bother you guys. Yi Shiwen also knew that there might be some who still held some grudges against him, so it didn't make sense to stay with them any longer. To be continued. Praise the sun! Oh slash. Chapter 187. NT, regular chapter. Chapter 187. Experts gather. Yi Shiwen left Qianqian's team. He knew that without his help, it would be extremely difficult for them to continue. Their strength was quite limited, but this time there was not a small improvement in their strengths. They were on the verge of breakthrough to the next stage. So it was not like they didn't achieve anything from Yi Shiwen addition into their team. This could be considered as more than compensation for the time their team was led by Yi Shiwen. But before going, Yi Shiwen took the map from Chi Fei and carefully observed it. After Yi Shiwen left, Chi Fei looked back and said, Qianqian, just where you met such a metamorphosis, he is simply too formidable. I do not know his background, but considering his strength, heart, and mind in the future, he will certainly become a legendary character, and perhaps at that time, we will also hear about him. Qianqian muttered, Let's go. Qian turned around and said, "We can no longer continue to go any further, guys. Let's find contentment in whatever we obtained so far." And the team members nodded in abundance because they knew that even with Su Yingdao was with them, it would be impossible for them to go any further. Yi Shiwen went towards the central region of the cemetery, along the paved way of bones of the dead, and as he was getting closer to the central region of the tomb, the machi was getting more abundant, while the skeleton monsters were also getting more formidable. However, he also continued to encounter more and more powerful warriors, and almost all of them were the experts of Truth 5th stage or above. The likes of Truth 3rd stage warriors were simply non-existent in this area because there was no way for them to survive here. Finding Truth 2nd stage warriors like Yi Shiwen at such depths of cemetery was simply out of question. One could see a giant tomb in the distance, while the outside was actually a piece by piece paving from the bones of the dead. Yi Shiwen looked at this grave, which appeared as if it was right in front of him, but seemed very far away. Yi Shiwen, this Devil Commander tomb is not located in this time and space, just like this whole area with bones is located in a different time and space from your world. It's impossible to get there if you want to just casually walk to that place. The only way is to break open the space. Yi Mo's experienced eyes had seen through the actual situation of this tomb. Sure enough, Yi Shiwen actually saw from afar how those powerful warriors were tearing the space to rush in from the cracks in space. Yi Shiwen was about to go in, but Yi Mo suddenly said, "Wait, Yi Shiwen, I feel the presence of people of Bai Ma Jiao." Yi Shiwen was surprised for a moment. It was somewhat incredible to think why people of Bai Ma Jiao would come here, but then he immediately relaxed, thinking that this place was after all the tomb of a devil commander, so how could Bai Ma Jiao possibly abandon it to be plundered by other people? Yi Shiwen closed his eyes to sense, and at a very distant place, he sensed the auras of several masters of Bai Ma Jiao. It was simply impossible to hide devil art's breath from Yi Shiwen. However, the auras of these people of Bai Ma Jiao were completely submerged in the endless amount of machi lingering about in the cemetery, and most people simply had no way to detect. But since Yi Shiwen had also practiced devil arts just like the people of Bai Ma Jiao, so he was able to perceive them from afar. Bai Ma Jiao had actually stationed a large number of troops outside to prepare an ambush. However, they were not ambushing anyone. In fact, they weren't even stopping the warriors and demon beasts from entering. What were they trying to do? From an average person's point of view, it was easy to guess that perhaps they didn't want to offend so many people at this moment. But the same logic couldn't be applied on an organization like Bai Ma Jiao, because anyway, their main goal was to offend the everyone and hand over the control of this world to devil race. So it was quite difficult to guess what was going on in their minds. Moreover, there were faint fluctuations in the machi, although it was perfectly covered under the machi of this tomb. But Yi Shiwen could still feel it, and knew that Bai Ma Jiao had covertly prepared his information here, but didn't know the reason behind it. Yi Shiwen paced back and forth for a moment, and did not know whether to go inside or not. Bai Ma Jiao was obviously plotting something, and if he went inside, then he would most likely fall into their trap. "Yi Shiwen, you can go inside, it's all right," Yi Mo said. "This Bai Ma Jiao Jin formation is just a peripheral arrangement, because they cannot disturb too many people, so it is not very strong. It seems like they are trying to use this formation in an attempt to induce a direct crack into the depths of the tomb, most likely to obtain the treasures present in the depths of this tomb." Yi Mo wholeheartedly explained things to Yi Shiwen. "If you were alone, then you'd better turn around and leave right now. But certainly there are a large number of experts here, and many more continue to arrive as we talk. When the time of danger comes, you could be just one fish in a school of fishes and just act according to the circumstances," Yi Mo said. Bai Ma Jiao's acting style is usually very domineering, arrogant, and despotic. But this time, they are being so careful, so there certainly are some tyrannical masters among the enemy, making them to behave cautiously right now. And Yi Shiwen nodded, then made up his mind, and immediately flew on the rainbow. He rushed towards the top of the mountain of bones, tore open the space, and went inside. Seeing another figure rush inside, a cold smile appeared on the face of Bai Ma Jiao leader, while a killing intent flashed in his eyes. However, he did not act rashly. Yi Shiwen tore the space to enter the dimension where the tomb was actually located, although the surrounding scenery looked exactly similar, as if he could almost see the things present outside. But Yi Shiwen actually knew that this was not the outside, this was an entirely different dimension. I never thought that this Devil Commander's tomb will actually have so tight security. We'll have two different spaces. Yi Shiwen thought aloud. He glanced around and saw endless mountains of bones everywhere, while a tyrannical breath was lurking about. All of the people were hiding behind these bone mountains and waiting for the tomb to open. Yi Shiwen also had to hide behind a mountain of bones. What's with these magical powers? Almost each one of them has an inconsistent and shifty presence. If this was an emperor's tomb, even approaching it should be impossible. Regardless of where an emperor-level character falls, his grave always resembles the nature itself. The tomb of an emperor-level figure is bound to be extraordinarily tyrannical. It automatically forms a supreme pattern of geomantic omen, and within the radius of hundreds of li, the terrifying killing intent distorts countless laws, condensing them into dreadful law weapons. Yemo said, "This Devil Commander's tomb is far inferior than the Emperor's tomb. Just look at this fluctuation. The space here is clearly about to collapse. It was born because of the competition of Great Island of the Immortals and Demon Beast Kingdom for numerous years. Maybe that's why the space here is so unstable and on the verge of collapsing." Yemo said, "So this time, among all of the masters who have arrived here, there certainly isn't anyone in the legendary realm. Because the space here is too fragile, and if a master of legendary realm appears, then it won't be able to withstand the fluctuations caused by a legendary level master. Even if only a little, but the fluctuation caused by such a master may lead to instant collapse of this space. So considering this, you still have a chance. Emperor-level people can also die." Yi Shiwen asked because according to what Yemo once said, an emperor-level character was a great existence, capable of ruling an entire world, but such a character could also die. Of course, since the ancient times, there has been endless number of deaths of emperor-level characters. In this universe, there's no one who cannot die. Yemo sighed and said. Yi Shiwen was silent, did not say anything, just activated the restraining breath technique and deeply restrained his own breath so as to not be discovered for as long as possible. At this time, finally someone unscrupulous appeared. He had an appearance of about 20 years old, clad in white clothes, and was holding a spear in his hand. The heroic bearing was thriving in his persona while his whole body appeared like an imposing spear, making the people not dare to watch intently. Seeing this man appear out of nowhere, suddenly, there were fluctuations in the soul searches of various experts. There were a lot of experts who used soul search with each other, and at this time, the ones who were able to communicate using soul search were obviously the tyrannical experts, basically with cultivation above truth 5th stage. In fact, only experts with cultivation above truth 5th stage were able to use soul search, and excluding a freak like Yi Shiwen, the experts with cultivation below truth 5th stage could not even use soul search to sense others, forget about using it for communication. However, their communication actually couldn't escape the capture from Tianyuan Mirror and fell into Yi Ziwen's mind. I did not expect that even Bai Wuhan would also appear for the treasure. Yes, he is known as the white-clothed sojourner. He is colder than the ice, possessed a killing heart, blood-thirsty slaughterer who kills at whim. An evil-minded tyrannical master. No one knows how many tyrannical masters have been killed by his long spear. Even as a loose cultivator, he is really a rare genius with God-gifted wisdom. I did not expect that the Devil Commander's treasure would even attract a master of truth 9th peak. Now we really don't have a chance. So unlucky, ah. Don't worry. The number of peerless masters who will arrive here for the treasure is far more than just one peerless master like Bai Wuhan. Just let them kill each other, while we can be like small fishes in troubled waters and act according to circumstances. After the appearance of this peerless master, Yi Shiwen immediately understood that it seemed like there were many others who held the exact same idea like him to lay low and reap benefits as the third party in a dispute. But this Bai Wuhan dared to be the first guy to appear openly in front of everyone, without concealing his strength, which clearly showed how much self-confidence he had in his own strength. After the sudden appearance of Bai Wuhan, soon, A second master quickly entered this space. It was actually a young boy in water blue robe, seemed about 17-year-old. Although he appeared quite young, but his aura was very compelling. Even the super genius of Xing clan, Xing Lang, has also emerged. He is not one bit weaker than Bai Wuhan, and as the leader of the younger generation of Xing clan, there's almost no rival of his unrestrained swordsmanship. Good graciousness, so many peerless talents have arrived at this place. Could it be that this time, all of the most talented individuals in the surrounding radius of almost 100,000 li have gathered here? Someone exclaimed out loud. Shortly after that appeared several figures of females, headed by a woman in adorned clothing, who looked exquisite and outstanding. Her name was Qing Mingwei, and she was actually a disciple of Female Palace, a considerably big influence in the East China Sea. The next to arrive was the newly emerging invincible genius of Great Island of the Immortals, Shangguan. He also possessed peerless imposing aura and had a heroic bearing. Finally, the last figure to arrive wasn't human, but a two-headed giant crocodile, 10 meters in length, faint ominous eyes glowing in the dark. He was one of the top figures of the new generation of demon beasts. His breath was significantly better than the breath of those several other tyrannical human warriors. To be continued, dash. Chapter 188. NT. Regular chapter. Sorry guys for being irregular lately. I'm having engineering and some exams. I will find time to update chapters whenever I can. My exams end on Friday. Enjoy! Chapter 188. Tomb opens suddenly. The strongest tyrannical master made an appearance. He was much more tyrannical than all the masters who arrived so far. His aura was soaring to the heavens, and he was certainly not trying to conceal it from others. However, he didn't wait for the people to get over their panic, and suddenly torn a void in the space and rushed towards the panic-stricken experts. One could easily see that this guy was incomparably rampant than any other experts already present there. Everyone looked. It was actually a young master. He indifferently looked at the crowd of experts, as if he was looking down on everyone. Yi Shiwen was actually quite surprised for a moment, because from the body of this human expert, he could actually sense the same aura as he sensed from Qi Fifan. He actually possessed a very similar breath to Qi Fifan, an extraordinary breath which was simply beyond the reach of any truth-level expert. Half-step legendary realm. Suddenly, an idea emerged in Yi Zaiwen's mind that this was definitely a half-step legendary figure, exceptionally formidable, not one bit inferior to Qi Fifan. But soon, Yi Shiwen relaxed and stopped the rigorous thinking about this, because even in Great Yu State, there were 4 half-step legendary level strongest true disciples in Yi Yuan School, and there were many half-step legendary experts in the younger generation of other major sects as well. So, considering that East China Sea was so vast, though it was said to be comparatively less densely populated than Great Yu State, but how could it not have any half-step legendary characters among the top players of younger generation? Yi Shiwen no longer surprised to see a half-step legendary master at this place. The experts were quite startled at the sudden emergence of this peerless master, but Shangguan of the Great Island of the Immortals was the only one whose complexion suddenly paled, and his eyes instantly filled with killing intention. Who is this man, and why does Shangguan hold such an intense killing intention for him? Don't you know? He is a famous expert, who first rose to fame about 100 years ago. This man is named Mo Shui. More than 100 years ago, he was once a disciple of Great Island of the Immortals and was considered the super genius at that time. He was actually a highly cultured genius. A lot of people said that the Great Island of the Immortals had trained him for the sole purpose of leading them in the future, but then no one knows what happened and Mo Shui actually betrayed them. Later, many experts of the Great Island of the Immortals chased him down to eradicate him, but they all perished in his hands. One of the perished pursuers was the elder brother of Shangguan. They say that the relationship between Shangguan and his brother was very good. It could be said that from childhood, he grew up in the care of his elder brother, but he never thought that his elder brother would actually die in the hands of Mo Shui. Since then, Shangguan has been constantly tracking down Mo Shui in all directions, everywhere just to kill him and take revenge for his elder brother's death. But Shangguan should not be the opponent of Mo Shui, right? How can he possibly pursue him? Who knows, but there are lots of misgivings between the two. A half-step master of legendary realm was considered very tyrannical, on par with peerless masters like Qi Fifan, who were considered incomparably super strong experts by the peers. When one such peerless master suddenly appeared in this devil commander's tomb, everyone's heart sank. No expected that such a terrifying master would come here. Now, did the other people have a chance left? Mo Shui, you traitor, you actually dared appear in front of me. Shangguan looked coldly at Mo Shui and said in a loud voice, "You seem to have grown up and look more and more like your elder brother." Mo Shui said, and it seemed like looking down on Shangguan, but from his facial expression, he appeared somewhat immersed into the past. "Damn you, you better not play hypocrite in front of me. My brother dead in your hands, not to mention you two used to be best friends. At the time of his death, he said that I must not chase after revenge." Shangguan said angrily, "Your brother said right. If you go on like this, you will die." Mo Shui spoke as the corners of his mouth curled up, revealing a strange smile. In the next instant, with a whiz, Mo Shui's figure, which seemed to have worn the space itself, instantly arrived in front of Shangguan, and he said, "It is not something you can intervene. Go to hell." Shangguan was the type of guy who would easily swallow the bait. He immediately punched straight toward Mo Shui, and the released Quan Jin began to crumble to space. This was the attack power of a master of truth 9th stage, potent enough to shock everyone. Quan Jin equals fist strength. However, Mo Shui gently dodged Shangguan's fist attack, and in the same instant, he directly pounded his palm on Shangguan's chest. Immediately, Shangguan spouted a mouthful of blood, and his body was sent flying far away. Mo Shui was simply tyrannical and invincible. Even if Shangguan possessed the strength of Truth 9th stage, but it was very difficult for him to compete with Mo Shui. As this breathtaking scene unfolded in front of Yi Shiwen, he finally understood that after achieving the strength of half-step legendary realm, one could obtain a part of the valiance of legendary masters. In fact, after breaking through from Truth 9th stage to half-step legendary realm, there was an increase in strength by almost thousands times, or even more. However, although the strength of Shangguan was not very large in comparison, it was not weak either, because he was not very far from stepping into half-step legendary realm. The gap between Truth 8th stage and Truth 9th stage was not very big in comparison to the gap between Truth 9th stage and half-step legendary realm. Truth 9th stage, Mo Shui fully demonstrated the strength of half-step legendary realm, but Yi Shiwen was able to feel that he didn't have any killing intent toward Shangguan. Otherwise, he would probably already be dead by now. Now, Yi Shiwen somewhat understood why even in a huge sect like Yuan School, although there were many experts at Truth 9th stage, but only few experts like Qi Fifan were called pro-disciples. In fact, there were only 4 strongest true disciples. And looking at their potential, one of them was supposed to become the head of the sect in the future. Although there are many ambitious disciples in the sect, but there was no way for them to compete with these 4 pro-disciples because they had already achieved the half-step legendary realm, and the huge gap between this realm and Truth 9th stage was simply unimaginable. While they were almost going to clash again, suddenly a loud noise echoed and the middle portion of the Bone Mountain finally started to open, and soon the entrance to the tomb completely opened, revealing that there was a world of things of its own on the inside, including vegetation, stone structures, and so on. But this tomb also had a rather grave nature, and after a certain time, it would collapse and enter into a rapid aging period. At this moment, there was no way to cover up the endless amount of aura from the treasures and vigorous Lingqi trapped inside the tomb for ages, and it finally seethed out. Everyone was suddenly excited because they could clearly sense Devil Commander's entire life savings. It was said that Devil Commander had always been going on expeditions throughout his life, and all of his accumulated was present in this tomb, which was simply innumerable, difficult to count. At this moment, the space fluctuated violently, and a figure rushed inside the tomb, at a lightning speed. Yi Shiwen saw that it was none other than Mo Shui. He was the fastest and quite decisive, so he didn't waste any time and immediately rushed inside. The next master to rush inside was Shangguan, who, like a mighty torrent, directly rushed inside the tomb. Shangguan was closely following Mo Shui. At this time, he was stubbornly chasing Mo Shui. He had already forgotten about Devil Commander's treasure, his initial motive to come here. Right now, his mind was fully focused on one thing, that he must kill Mo Shui, the killer of his elder brother, and take revenge. Following closely behind Shangguan was by Wu Hin and other peerless experts, rushing instantly inside the tomb on rainbows. Yi Shiwen also launched his devil wings, and at an extremely fast speed, he instantly rushed inside the tomb. His figure was just like a black shadow, and he was much faster than many experts behind him. Although he possessed the weakest cultivation among all, a mere cultivation of truth second stage, but relying on the speed granted by the devil wings, his speed was now comparable to the speed of truth ninth stage masters like Shangguan, Bai Wuhan, etc. All of these peerless masters were the first to rush inside, and that too at terrifying speeds. Yi Shiwen directly charged in, and once he was inside, he glanced around the tomb, which was definitely luxurious enough. It was completely inlaid by legendary glowing pearls, which appeared exceptionally luminous. But for truth-level masters like Yi Shiwen, as long as there was even a single ray of light, it would seem little different to them from daytime. But at this time, these magnificent gold and jade glowing pearls actually began to crack, and several glowing pearls instantaneously collapsed, crumbled into powder, and carried away with the wind. This indicated that the tomb had actually come to the end of its life. These immortal glowing pearls had been originally sturdy for thousands of years, but now they actually crack and disintegrated. Yi Shiwen flapped his devil wings. The speed of his flight was very fast, but still lagging behind those peerless experts because the sheer difference in skill between them was really too large. The current passage of this tomb was still paved with bones of the dead as before, but compared to outside, these bones were exuding formidable breaths. Almost immediately after Yi Shiwen flew in, the bones of the dead piled up and the passage rose back to life, and within moments, an insanely formidable army of skeletons appeared in the passage. According to the skeleton army sequence, the experts to be aimed at were Yi Shiwen and the other experts flying behind him. "Shoot the arrows!" Everyone only heard a cold voice that came from the skeleton army. Suddenly, innumerable skeleton soldiers shot the bone arrows towards the rushing experts, and the passage was not very big. Not to mention there were so many skeleton soldiers who together shot innumerable bone arrows almost at once. Almost in a flash, a massive curtain of arrows formed and quickly blocked the entire space of the passage. The tyrannical strength of these skeleton soldiers was far beyond the imagination of ordinary people. Each and every one of them was a master of truth level, and even the weakest among them was a master of truth 5th stage. Although these were only bone arrows and one arrow won't pose much threat, but when facing several thousands of these arrows, it was simply like living through a horrifying nightmare. This airtight rain of arrows was basically a nightmare for the experts. Secret rain clouds. While the devil wings were constantly flapping behind Yi Shiwen's back, he shot his palm out, and a faint dragon roar resounded. The huge palm shadow immediately congealed above Yi Shiwen and positioned in front of his body in order to protect him from the attacks, while Tianyuan Mirror also activated and released Scarlet Curtain to protect his body. Bang! 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 The rain of arrows was easily blocked by Yi Shiwen's impenetrable palm shadow. His whole body was shielded by the palm shadow, and the arrow rain was simply unable to approach him. He directly rushed through the endless rain of bone arrows, but for so many experts behind him, unfortunately, they didn't have such good luck, although most of them were at higher cultivation compared to Yi Shiwen, but they didn't possess ancient martial technique like Tyrant Body Technique, which could literally turn his skin hard like iron. Neither did they have Tianyuan Mirror to protect their bodies. To be continued. Chapter 189. NT. Last week's third regular chapter. Thanks for wishing me luck for the exams. I really need that haha, enjoy. Chapter 189 Blood-robed ancestor beheaded Poochie. 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 There were many experts who couldn't evade the bow and arrows, and their whole body essence and blood was instantly absorbed by the void, while at the same time, the bodies of skeleton soldiers started to grow flesh and blood. This whole scene was very frightening. After the blood and essence of these experts was absorbed by the skeleton soldiers, a bright green flow flashed in their eyes. It seemed like some of the memories of their past lives had been restored, making them even more bloodthirsty than before. At this time, Yi Shiwen didn't have time to attend to other people. He didn't want to fall in the trap of these skeleton soldiers, so he directly flew deeper into the tomb. There were several passages, and each of these passages led to different direction, much like a maze of intertwined paths. As Yi Shiwen advanced further inside, he lost track of the peerless experts who were flying in front of him all this time. Their breaths dispersed in different directions and vanished without a trace after some time. Yi Shiwen was not in a hurry to go forward, but resorted to using Tianyuan mirror to sought for Machi in the deepest places of the tomb. But at this time, a large group of powerhouses rushed there in abundance from behind. Like Yi Shiwen, they also managed to get past the ambush of skeleton soldiers. But after arriving there, these experts immediately separated and rushed into various channels. There were many demon beasts also present among them. All of these experts who managed to get past the ambush were tyrannical powerhouses. Yi Shiwen also chose a passage and sped along it. Then, abruptly, the Lingqi began to seethe up violently throughout the tomb, and several Jin arrangements, spread across the entire tomb, suddenly activated. Upon sensing the intruders, these Jin methods activated spontaneously. Suddenly, an enormous devil coercion pressed down. Although it didn't seem like the coercion belonged to the devil commander himself, but the horrifying coercion indicated that the coercion belonged to a terrifying devil expert, whose strength was way beyond the legendary realm, probably in the realm above the legendary realm. At this time, the endless coercion pressed down, and all of the experts suddenly staggered and were almost crushed by it. They could only resist this coercion by covering their bodies with Zhen Yuan, and as a result, the strengths of these masters decreased several times, and their cultivation suffered a decrement of almost 3 stages. The tyrannical experts, all of a sudden, became much weaker, while on the contrary, the skeleton soldiers became more formidable. Now, if they were not careful and received even a single strike from the bone swords, then nothing would save them from becoming food and nourishment for skeleton soldiers. For others, it was a big calamity, but it was not an issue for Yi Shiwen because the coercion of Devil Commander didn't affect him at all. He had Tianyuan mirror to shield his body, and it was actually the tool of Devil King himself. So at Yi Zaiwen's current skill, Devil Commander's coercion didn't have any effect on him. Yi Shiwen was speeding all the way until he stopped before a wall, when Tianyuan mirror felt an intensely fluctuating Lingqi behind the wall. Perhaps there was another world behind it. Yi Shiwen didn't waste time and directly used Coiling Dragon Palm to tear open the wall. Sure enough, it was really amazing as Yi Shiwen anticipated. As Yi Shiwen went inside, he immediately saw magnificent scenery everywhere, consisting of a large river of Lingqi. Yi Shiwen took a deep breath and felt as if several arteries suddenly blossomed and opened up throughout his body. Numerous heavenly treasures were floating in the river of Lingqi, and there were some who were even on the verge of attaining spiritual wisdom, which was very rare. The amount of treasures present in this cavern was enough to make Yi Shiwen rich overnight. Yi Shiwen, this is a good opportunity, Yi Mo said in an excited manner. At present, you have done enough accumulation at your current level, and this river of Lingqi contains the most suitable energy. If you absorb it, your strength will immediately have a breakthrough. Yi Shiwen was suddenly overjoyed. There was certainly endless amount of wealthy in this devil commander's tomb, and that too much more than he originally expected. Yi Shiwen was about to start collecting the treasures, when suddenly a loud shout came from behind him. Not so fast, boy. Stop right there. This blood-robed ancestor has taken a liking for this place and the treasures. At this time, Yi Shiwen turned around and saw a very old man, clad in blood-stained robe. There was an ominous and vicious expression on his face. I first discovered this place, but now you actually intend to snatch it from me? Yi Shiwen said as he coldly looked at that old man. Snatch from you? Do you think a petty junior of Truth's second stage has the right qualifications to discuss conditions with a senior like me? The blood-robed ancestor laughed loudly. It was obvious that he was openly looking down on Yi Shiwen. In his heart, he was actually paying no attention to Yi Shiwen, because in his eyes, Yi Shiwen was just a junior of Truth's second stage and nothing, while he himself was an old expert of Truth's seventh stage. He was considered a rampant, fierce, and quite an illustrious character throughout the East China Sea. From his words, it was obvious that he didn't plan to show any mercy to Yi Shiwen. Well, then why don't you try and find out yourself whether I am eligible to talk conditions with you? Yi Shiwen sneered a few moments ago. The Devilsion method had not activated, then he would certainly turn away right now without staying a moment. But now the situation was entirely different. You are courting death. This old man is speaking properly with a brat like you, so you should be honored. The blood-robed ancestor looked sharply at him with his sword-like, piercing gaze. You have brought about your own destruction, so later don't blame the old man for this. He thundered loudly and instantly released an enormous sword light, congealing a huge mountain of sword in the midair, gigantic and mighty, which immediately pressed down towards Yi Shiwen. A cruel light flashed in the eyes of blood-robed ancestor. In his view, Yi Shiwen certainly could not withstand his attack. Even if right now he was unable to fully display his full strength, but this much strength was enough to completely obliterate Yi Shiwen, considering he was merely a master of Truth's second stage, and was also under the suppression effect, so right now his strength level should be probably in the Xiantian realm. Arrogant old geezer. You are acting recklessly. You better not start asking for mercy now, because it won't change anything. Today is the day you die. Yi Shiwen narrowed his eyes and said. This blood-robed ancestor was trying to bully him, thinking that Yi Shiwen was some weakling who wouldn't dare to fight back. But how could Yi Shiwen possibly take it lightly? Suddenly, layer upon layer waves of profound and vigorous Jin Yuan exploded out of Yi Ziwen's body and simultaneously released a terrifying breath, which was much more tyrannical than the breath of blood-robed ancestor. Impossible! Blood-robed ancestor looked incredibly at Yi Shiwen because he just couldn't believe how he was able to display his full strength even under the suppression. Not to mention, this extent of strength should be unachievable for a master of Truth's second stage. Yi Shiwen shot out his palm, and it was instantly wrapped in Jin Yuan, taking form of a dragon claw and pressed down toward the sword mountain to directly grasp it. Boom! That seemingly endless sword mountain was directly grabbed by Yi Shiwen and exploded. The explosion caused the sword mountain to disintegrate and dissolve into endless sword light, which instantly filled the space. Blood-robed ancestor saw this terrifying scene and almost did not faint from the shock. But Yi Shiwen did not want to give him enough time to calm down. He directly opened his devil wings and instantly appeared in front of the old man, while at the same time his palm turned into a dragon claw and directly grasped the Jin Yuan protective cover around the old man's body. The Jin Yuan couldn't withstand the enormous strength present in the dragon claw and exploded almost immediately, and the dragon claw advanced towards the skinny body of the blood-robed ancestor. Blood-robed ancestor did not expect that Yi Ziwen's speed would be so fast, but not just that, he never thought that Yi Ziwen's offensive would actually be so swift and sharp, and it was simply unimaginable that he would possess such tyrannical strength even under the suppression effect. He was caught off guard by Yi Shiwen, and a chunk of his flesh and bones were instantly torn off by the dragon claw, scattering bone dust, flesh and blood in all directions. Ah! Blood-robed ancestor screamed and quickly retreated, while chunks of flesh and blood fell off along the way of his retreat. He immediately knew that this time, he did the biggest mistake of his life by kicking this iron wall. It didn't take him long to realize that he had encountered a monster, that Yi Shiwen was not actually an expert of Truth's second stage and must be concealing his real cultivation, which was probably above his own cultivation. He couldn't possibly contend with an expert like Yi Shiwen who was just pretending to be a Truth's second stage, but in reality was a tyrannical expert. Blood-robed ancestor's heart immediately sank. If only he was not in this damned place. If only his strength was not limited, he would have torn this extremely arrogant junior to shreds, making him know the extent of his fierceness, making him witness the fate of those who dared to offend him. But how could Yi Shiwen let him escape? Tianyuan mirror instantly flew, and the scarlet light irradiated upon him, wrapping him completely. Then, Yi Shiwen directly rushed towards him. His figure flashed just like the black lightning, and in an instant he arrived in front of blood-robed ancestor. Yi Ziwen's palm turned into dragon claw and directly clutched him in its grasp and crushed him. Blood-robed ancestor only had enough time to utter a pitiful scream. A guy who ran amok throughout the East China Sea, killing countless experts at whim, doing all kinds of evil things as he wished, but today he was killed by a youngster like Yi Shiwen, and his essence was completely absorbed by Tianyuan mirror. Tianyuan mirror suddenly began to transform. One must know that although Yi Shiwen was able to behead blood-robed ancestor, but it was all thanks to the special devil enchantment. Yi Shiwen just relied on the suppression effect of this tomb and managed to behead on weakened blood-robed ancestor. If it was in an ordinary situation, then at that time, Yi Shiwen would be killed instead. However, although blood-robed ancestor was suppressed, but he was actually an expert of Truth 7th stage, so his essence, blood, and flesh were obviously going to be tyrannical and potent when absorbed by Tianyuan mirror. But no matter how powerful an expert actually was, Yimo could easily and completely absorb and digest them in one fell swoop. So long as blood-robed ancestor's flesh and essence was completely digested by the prestigious Tianyuan mirror, it could be fully restored to Truth 5th stage, and then its scarlet rays, when irradiated upon, would be able to quickly kill experts of Truth 5th stage with ease. Yi Shiwen also started to collect these treasures. This endless river of Lingqi had many heavenly treasures which could be added to Yi Ziwen's precious wealth collection, and were enough to help him in directly breaking through to the Truth 3rd stage. When Yi Shiwen would have the breakthrough to Truth 3rd stage, he would actually obtain enough strength to contend with experts of Truth 5th stage. In fact, he would be able to achieve the fighting strength of the so-called Small Truth Realm in one fell swoop. Just like there was Shao Xiantian level in Xiantian Realm, placed right after the peak of Xiantian 5th stage. In Truth Realm, there's Small Truth level, which is placed right after Truth 5th peak. By that time, in this tomb, so long as he wouldn't mess with Mo Shui, Shangguan, and few other experts of Truth 9th stage and above, he could completely ran amok because the remaining experts would no longer pose a threat to him. To be continued. Chapter 190 and T. Hey guys, my engineering InSim exams are over now. I am back to full-fledged translation. Enjoy! Chapter 190 Truth 3rd stage in the Big Sarcophagus. Yi Shiwen had shielded the surrounding environment and entered a different space. The space in this tomb was very disorderly and hence was easily torn open by Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen tore a human-sized hole in this space and hid inside it. Of course, all of the wealth present in that cavern had already been seized by him and stored in Tianyuan mirror. At this time, Tianyuan mirror was exuding bright and dazzling light, while the breath also changing slowly and becoming more and more powerful as it was absorbing and digesting the flesh, blood, and essence of blood-robed ancestor. Jin Yuan was also wildly revolving within his body. With each breath, a long stream of Lingqi entered into his body, and his breath was increasing crazily. There was an endless amount of Lingqi present in the river of Lingqi, which was helping Yi Shiwen in crazy enhancement of his strength. A huge coiling dragon was rising and vanishing alternately behind Yi Shiwen, which made him appear like the dragon god himself. One could see the dragon ghost sitting beside Yi Shiwen and blinking. There was an aggressive overflow of energy in the surroundings of Yi Shiwen. It seemed as if an ancient overlord had reincarnated, sweeping away everything. In addition to the rapid promotion and cultivation, Yi Shiwen also practiced various martial techniques in the river of Lingqi. He was also able to practice each of these techniques to higher levels. Yi Shiwen took advantage of this excess amount of Ling Qi to actually comprehend Tyrant Body Technique to the fourth layer. A golden yellow light enveloped his body as a result of it. From afar, he appeared like a golden statue, sitting in utmost silence and enlightenment. Yi Zaiwen's breath finally increased and reached the peak level. Only a slight step was needed to complete the transformation. Then he would leave the second stage of Truth Realm behind after having a breakthrough and step into Truth Third Stage. At this time, perhaps, he would already have broken into the third stage, but since he had practiced Tyrant Body Technique, so the retaining capacity of his body surpassed ordinary masters of Truth Second Stage, and cells throughout his body were able to accommodate huge amounts of Jin Yuan, after being quenched by Ling Qi, which made his body strong to outrageous proportions. However, at the same time, it caused difficulties for Yi Shiwen to have a breakthrough when compared to an average martial artist. But it also made him much more powerful than experts at the same cultivation level. The only disadvantage was the insanely increased difficulty to break through than the average experts, which was increasing exponentially with each breakthrough. Yi Shiwen felt the pores opening throughout his body, and there was continuous throughput of Ling Qi being crazily absorbed into his body. Yi Shiwen finally reached the limit and rushed past in one fell swoop. Boom! Ling Qi was surging and being absorbed by Yi Zaiwen's body at an extremely faster rate, and finally reached the saturation level in his body, then suddenly expanded, and Yi Shiwen opened his eyes. He finally went a step further, reaching the third stage of Truth Realm, and with his current strength, he could easily contend with experts of Truth Fifth Stage. In this tomb, excluding Mo Shui, Bai Wuhan, Shangguan, and few others, none of the remaining experts would pose a threat to him. Keeping 3-level suppression in mind, experts having cultivation up to Truth 8th Stage are not his opponents. And even if he was not the match of Mo Shui and the other peerless masters, but if he bumped into them, he was confident that they would not be able to kill him, and he would easily get out. Yi Shiwen was full of confidence. In a while, Tianyuan Mirror finally also broke through. The bloody circle instantly diffused one after another, and an extremely tyrannical aura was released out from Tianyuan Mirror. Yi Mo flew out of Tianyuan Mirror. He looked very happy, and said while laughing, "Finally restored, now the likes of Imperial Guards are no longer your match. No need to be afraid of them anymore. Even that 8th Prince is no longer a threat. You can easily take him on. But now, you shouldn't delay any more, otherwise the hidden treasures of Devil Commander will be seized by other experts. Those are boundless wealth and will play a very important role in your future practice." Yi Mo further explained. Yi Shiwen nodded. He was thinking that he could not continue to practice here. One day he would step in a legendary realm, and would also step into the realm after that. There was endless practice lying in front of him, and in comparison to others, he was much more dependent on external means of practice in order to break through, which was especially difficult for him. But Yi Shiwen had continued to bravely progress forward. This was the reason why Yi Shiwen never let go of any of the items he came across. Not just because these items actually added to his wealth, but his practice itself depended on them. If not for those items, he would not have achieved his current level. Because for others, their dependence upon external force would only make them to develop a very unstable foundation. Therefore, many people who practiced devil ways or evil ways perished when their bodies exploded as a result of practicing some external form of force. But this was not the case for Yi Shiwen. Others people had to face hidden dangers of progressing by leaps and bounds, because they first mistakenly raised their skill, resulting in the rapid progress in skill but lack of inner state, eventually resulting in their bodies to explode and perish. Just like a reservoir, if it could accommodate 1 million liters of water, and then suddenly out of nowhere, 2 million liters of water is poured in, ultimately, it would lead to the explosion of boundary. But this was not the same for Yi Shiwen, because if his cultivation method was taken into consideration, there was a simultaneous expansion of the reservoir along with the introduction of extra water. And no matter how much water was filled in, there would be a constant expansion of the reservoir, thereby nullifying the chance of any sort of overload or overflow. These problems would simply never appear in front of him. As long as there were enough spirit stones, then Yi Zaiwen's skill would progress faster and faster. Hence his cultivation level would also upgrade quicker, complementing the growth of each other and progressing together. While other experts could not do such a thing, so they needed to stop at each step in order to consolidate their inner states after each breakthrough. Then Yi Shiwen made up his mind and started collecting treasures from the cavern. One after another, caverns were discovered Yi Shiwen and then thoroughly looted. These caverns were hidden behind the walls, and for average people, it was simply impossible to find them. Only some obvious caverns were easy to discover. But the same didn't apply to Yi Shiwen, because he was the owner of Tianyuan Mirror, which was extremely sensitive to both Machi and Lingqi being released by various treasures, therefore could easily discover these treasures quickly. On the way, he also encountered some people who intended to seize his wealth, but how could he take it lightly? Unless he was facing those peerless experts, all others were simply not his match. Those who intended to rob Yi Ziwen's wealth were all beheaded by him. Yi Shiwen quickly received all of the wealth from the beheaded experts, and considering the wealth he collected on this trip to Devil Commander's tomb, he guessed that although there was not much material wealth, but since he always used to have a drought of spirit stones which were so vital for his practice, it could be said that for a long time he should not have worry about lack of spirit stones. At this time, top grade spirit stones were piled up in Tianyuan Mirror, and among which there were a lot of best quality spirit stones as well. In the end, this trip was certainly not in vain. However, these were not the most important. The most important place was the tomb's main chamber where Devil Commander died in a sitting posture. That was the most precious thing. But that main chamber was located in the depths of the tomb, and one needed to penetrate directly through the tomb to reach there. Only after entering the depths, Yi Shiwen would be able to receive the wealth hidden in the tomb. As he continued to go deeper and deeper, finally, all the passages merged into one main passage. At this time, several experts could be seen in this passage. Originally, these experts had separated after taking various different passages, but in the end, they once again gathered in this main passage, and right now, they were attacking the tomb door. At this time, several magic puppets were guarding the tomb door. They belonged to a variety of mechanical puppets, powered by spirit crystal. These puppets were very valiant, although were merely at the 5th stage of Truth Realm, but under the suppression effect of Devilgen method, all of the intruders found it very difficult to deal with them. Among them, the most powerful was the double-headed crocodile demon beast. He was also playing the leader of demon beasts, and under his leadership, the tomb door was being attacked by the demon beasts. Of course, his attacks were the most intense ones, meaning all of the other experts were just waiting in order to let others strive while themselves benefit as the third party. Of course, that crocodile-headed demon beast was not an idiot, and unlike most demon beasts, he possessed high IQ and was very confident of himself. He thought that no one had the ability to snatch things from him. Yi Shiwen did not go forward rashly, was only observing from a distance, because rushing now would simply be of no significance in this situation. This stupid demon beast is being really silly. He's actually trying to take the lead. Does he really think that we will just sit back and do nothing? You are silly. Do you think that he really doesn't know about this? He is just too full of himself. And didn't you see, some of these demon beasts were vigilantly looking towards us, so they're really not that stupid as we thought. But if we do not hurry and when the time comes, all the treasures will fall into their hands. I don't want that. These demon beasts are indeed very powerful, and they also despise us humans. Just you wait. When the genuine, peerless masters will come into action, then they won't stand a chance. Then we will also have the opportunity to benefit as the third party in a quarrel. From the distance, Yi Shiwen saw those particular demon beasts fighting viciously. Although their cultivation was suppressed, but they were still many times more powerful than experts of the similar cultivation level due to their tyrannical flesh and bodies. Although their cultivation was suppressed, but the same was not true for their strong bodies. So at this time, they were the most tyrannical. Precisely because of this, the two-headed crocodile dared to be so blatant from the get-go. The magic puppets were viciously attacked by these demon beasts and soon all exploded with a loud bang. After that, the demon beasts began to attack the tomb door. Although no one knew what kind of material was used in the manufacture of Tomb Chamber's door, but it was very strong. However, it still couldn't withstand the attacks from those demon beasts and soon began to break. Boom! Half portion of the door was blown open, and suddenly, almost endless amount of liquefied lingqi instantly gushed out. Numerous experts were all prepared. After all, this liquefied lingqi was very precious because it must have taken several years for lingqi to get liquefied. To be continued, dash. Chapter 191. NT. Wednesday's regular chapter. Enjoy. Chapter 191. Terrifying sword intention. Many people swallowed their saliva at just the anticipation of so much wealth present inside. It was hard to guess how much treasure was stored inside the tomb's main chamber. You humans are not allowed to approach this place. This is the wealth of our demon beast kingdom. If anyone try to get closer, then he will be executed on the spot. That double-headed alligator started at the human powerhouses and said in a bell-like, ringing voice, "Who do you think you are? Everyone can have a share from this massive pile of treasures. We definitely do not agree with you. Why should we give up on this big opportunity and let you demon beasts take everything?" A human expert clamored, but even before their voice could fall, a water sword instantly went across the sky, directly piercing the air during its advance and penetrated that expert. He struggled for a while, but simply couldn't fight back and eventually died. There was a hint of cruel expression on that double-headed crocodile's face. He was abnormal, malicious, and inhumane. He was simply not afraid of humans, and neither did he acknowledge them as equals. He believed that land was the domain of human beings, but ocean was the domain of demon beasts, so why should he be afraid of humans underwater? This quick and decisive double-headed crocodile immediately awed many humans, who witnessed what happened just now with their own eyes. However, those human masters apparently did not appear in the mood to give up. After all, this was the main chamber of Devil Commander's tomb, and most precious treasures should be hidden inside. Everyone was well prepared to start any time, staring at the demon beasts crowded near the entrance, while at the same time, they were using soul searches to chat with each other. What do these muscle-brained demon beasts understand about anything? They actually think they can eat up all the treasures, and we will just wait on side and see. They are asking for it. Do not worry. Now the door has not fully opened, and when it really opens up, we will see who gets to seize the treasures. Yi Shiwen was in no hurry and quietly hiding. Boom! With a loud noise, both planks of tomb door finally fell. Immediately then, those demon beasts rapidly blocked off the entire door and began to stare covetously at the human experts. Then the two-headed crocodile rushed as the leader of Demon Beast team. "Everyone, let's go together. These demon beasts are really acting recklessly by thinking that would monopolize all of the treasures, and we will just wait and see." Finally, someone could not resist. He shouted and rushed forward along with other experts. Boom! Along with a loud explosion, a terrifying Quanjin rumbled and directly exploded in the middle of Demon Beast crowd. In an instant, many of the demon beasts couldn't dodge in time and directly evaporated in the explosion, while at the same time, a figure flew over from the middle of the crowd. It was Mo Shui. At this time, there was no doubt that Mo Shui's tyrannical strength was fully displayed in front of everyone, and he rushed inside the main chamber. Mo Shui went inside, followed by Wu Hin and other peerless experts. They rushed through the red pieces of demon beast remains, floating in the surroundings. The arrogance of rampant and domineering demon beasts was instantly broken. The remaining alive demon beasts were immediately outnumbered by the rushing human experts. Although they were very strong individuals, but there were a lot of human experts rushing from all directions. And at this time, Yi Shiwen also rushed among the crowd of experts. As they entered the tomb chamber, they discovered an incomparably spacious open hall, and a sarcophagus was located in the farthest part of the hall, and it was wrapped in an enchantment. Yi Shiwen, be careful, there's a Zhun method inside there, Yi Mo suddenly said to warn Yi Shiwen. Then abruptly, an incredibly overwhelming sword key blotted out the heaven and earth, unfolding a horrifying scene, which could send shivers down the spine of anyone. No one would have thought that the depths of the tomb would actually turn out to be like this. It did not have huge wealth as they had imagined, but actually had a huge and seemingly dangerous enchantment. Double-headed crocodile, who had run ahead of everyone, was instantly cut by a section of sword key. His blood splashed out, and his whole body was sent flying out. Even Emo Shui was unable to escape from this sword key attack, and in a while he was wounded by it. Not just he, Bai Wuhan and other peerless experts were also unable to dodge. They were quite embarrassed, although their tyrannical power was boundless. But while facing this sword key attack, they simply didn't have the strength to fight back. The long blade danced in Yi Zaiwen's hand, and at the same time his whole body was wrapped in a defensive layer of blade light. But soon, the blade light protective layer was shattered and Yi Shiwen was cut several times. But the good news was that his body was under the protection of Tianyuan Mirror, which granted superb defensive powers to him. So he just received some superficial flesh wounds, which would not pose serious problems. Yi Shiwen was amazed, because a sword intention suddenly jumped up several feet and condensed into an entity. Immediately, in the periphery, the sword key started producing chirping around, as if it was surrendering in front of the sword intention. Sword King. No one could make a guess about the length of time spent by this sword intention, but even after undergoing through endless time, it had been able to have such might. This obviously made it clear to everyone that the owner of this sword intention was definitely a terrifying existence. There were chills in the hearts of all people. This sword intention was just too horrifying. If it really attacked, then perhaps none of them would survive. It could be guessed from the fact that just now a casual sword key attack pinned 1/3 of experts tightly on the ground. Above the sword intention, an unimaginable form of a person gradually emerged. There was a long sword in his hand. What kind of existence was this? He was tall, grandiose, and sturdy. His face was blurred, and it was almost impossible to clearly see his facial features. He was standing there with a sheathed, double-edged sword. He had a heroic bearing, standing above the sword intention, and appeared like a peerless swordsman. At that moment, the endless sword intention momentarily scattered in all directions inside the chamber, making all of the people present there to have an impulse to submit to this mighty king-like figure. They felt like lowly ants standing in front of a deity. Everyone knew that it was just Soul Search, not a deity, but still, if the Soul Search was so terrifying, then one could imagine his shocking identity. Pure sword intention was able to totally suppress all of the experts, making their hearts fill up with admiration. And even Yi Shiwen was no exception and admired the elegant demeanor of the opposite party. Yi Shiwen had a hard time imagining that if mere Soul Search could have such elegant charisma, then the real expert would have what kind of terrifying presence. There was complete silence in the tomb chamber. No one dared to speak or issue even a little bit of sound, afraid to alarm this fearful existence. After so many years, eventually, this tomb was actually supposed to be born again someday. And today is the day. The blurred figure thought aloud. Just like the fate inevitable, you all leave this place. There's nothing here that you seek. The Soul Search figure glanced at the crowd and said, "Senior, there is repression inside." Emo Shui stepped out and said, "No, there's nothing here." The figure shook his head and said, while his sword-like sharp eyes looked at Emo Shui, as if seeing right through him, "Do you really think after so long, that kind of thing will continue to exist in this world?" Everyone's vision immediately shifted towards Emo Shui. He seemed to know the real secret of this place, and perhaps this time, they made a mistake. There was a possibility that this place was simply not just the Devil Commander's tomb. There was something else hidden here, a secret, but Emo Shui looked indifferent and did not give any explanation to anyone. After saying that, the Soul Search figure suddenly looked at Yi Shiwen, and it seemed as if he saw through Yi Shiwen. An astonished look appeared in his eyes, but just for a moment, then returned to normal. So it's true. Anyone can die, except the peerless geniuses. The Soul Search sighed with emotion and thought, while seemingly somewhat lost in old memories. You all leave, should not covet these things. Sooner or later, you will become unimaginable existences. As he said these words, he waved his hand, and suddenly, A terrifying sword key swept out into the tomb chamber, and the space was directly torn apart, tearing out a way straight outside to the tomb periphery. Mo Shui was the first to set out and flew out through the space crack, followed by a crowd of experts who did not want to stay here any longer. After all, there was a sense of inexplicable horror hidden in the elegant demeanor of this deity-like figure. This kind of feeling, where someone was dominating one's fate, was unbearable for them. They felt exceptionally uncomfortable, and even Yi Shiwen did not stay long. And since the moment he was glanced at by that figure, he felt as if suddenly all his secrets had been seen through. This feeling was also very uncomfortable, even though the other party was not malicious to him. But during that flash, a moment ago, he actually was unable to feel Yi Mo's presence. It seemed like Yi Mo disappeared, because Yi Shiwen couldn't sense even a shred of his aura. Yi Shiwen was eager to find out, so he also did not stay there and went out of the space crack, following the crowd of experts. After leaving the space crack, experts discovered that they were outside the tomb, near the mountain of bones of the dead. They were somewhat horrified in their hearts. After all, the technique used to create this space crack and linkage was simply at a terrifying level. Then, abruptly, just when they were feeling relieved, the color of the entire sky changed in a flash, and endless clouds in the sky instantly took the form of swords. 10,000 swords had suddenly changed the color of the world itself, and the endless sword key began to fall towards by Ma Jiao followers, who were standing outside and looking at the sky. But it was too late for them to escape, and all of them were instantly crucified to the ground by the endless numbers of swords. Everyone looked at this scene with scared looks in their eyes. Moreover, there was a feeling of rejoice in their hearts because they never expected that Ma Jiao followers were waiting outside to ambush them. Fortunately, even if they had managed to seize treasures and come out of the tomb, they might not have escaped from the ambush of Ma Jiao followers. But thanks to that soul search figure, they were able to escape tragedy. To be continued. Here's my new release schedule. Monday, 0 to 1 sponsored chapter Tuesday, 0 to 1 sponsored chapter Wednesday, 1 regular chapter Thursday, 0 to 1 sponsored chapter Friday, 1 regular chapter Saturday, 1 sponsored chapter Sunday, 1 regular chapter note. 1. If I am unable to release a chapter on any day, that's most likely because of real-life commitments, so expect the pending chapters within that week itself. 2. Sponsored chapters depend on donations. I will release each sponsored chapter for $40 received in donations. 3. When I am busy with real life, or queue is too long, I will make an announcement and lock the donation button. Chapter 192. NT. Thursday's sponsored chapter. Thanks to Michael Haas for sponsoring this chapter. Chapter 192. Imperial Guards Commander-in-Chief. The reason why Ma Jiao followers were waiting outside was very simple, because this tomb was like the lifetime savings of a ruthless experts, not to mention he was supposedly the Devil Commander, or might even be an unknown Emperor-level master. So it was obvious that there would be layers after layers of traps to stop the intruders. If they rushed inside, then the loss was inevitable, so it was better to wait until the other experts would rush out with the treasures. Their plan was indeed very good, but the unexpected happened, and not even the Truth 9-stage followers were able to escape from the sword key attack that fell from above all of a sudden and crucified them on the ground. They never thought that their plan would backfire, and they would be the victims in the end. Then an even more horrifying scene appeared in front of the crowd, along with countless blazing sword key. It seemed as if the entire space was being pierced by infinite swords that fell on the mountains of bones. The bone mountains and the entirety of tomb instantly vaporized from the impact by this terrifying sword key and disappeared in the space turbulence. Later on, no one would be able to tell that something existed here. A cold feeling appeared in the hearts of everyone, because they knew that their treasure hunt was now over, and soon they would have to leave. Phew! Yi Mo's voice suddenly echoed in Yi Shiwen's mind. That guy was scary. Hey, where were you all this time? Yi Shiwen asked. That guy, just now, I was discovered by him. Yi Mo said. If he wanted to, He could have pulled me out, and I would be unable to stop him. I do not know for what reasons, but he ignored my existence, Yemo said in a somewhat startled manner. Although he had no idea who that guy was, but he was sure about one thing, that he was scary. That's why until now, Yemo didn't dare to come out. That guy's soul-search incarnation itself was so scary. One could simply not guess what Thatcher Actor's legacy actually was. It seemed like he was trying to suppress the coffin, but in the end, what was exactly hidden in the coffin that needed such a terrifying suppression? Yi Shiwen had a slight feeling that perhaps, in addition to Devil Commander's wealth, there was something else hidden here. But anyway, this time, it could be said that Yi Shiwen's treasure hunt was very productive. He obtained lots of treasures, not an amount that one expert could occupy alone, more than enough even for truth-level experts. Yi Shiwen did not leave immediately, but sat down on the floor and started praying for the deceased souls. There were a lot of seniors who deserved to rest in peace. Those heroes, or even the enemies, must not be forgotten to rot in resentment, because after death, everyone deserves to be reborn. So Yi Shiwen decided to pray for all of them. As Yi Shiwen continued to recite the prayers, several golden apertures arose from the ground and spread out in a circle around him. The resentment attached to the skeletons were also swept away by the golden apertures and reduced little by little. The shrieks and cries from the lingering resentment calmed down little by little as he continued to pray for their peace. 3 days later, Yi Shiwen was sitting in the sea for 3 full days, reading the prayers aloud. The souls of all of the predecessors who fought here and died finally found peace due to Yi Shiwen's guidance and could finally enjoy the rebirth. Yi Shiwen did not know whether hell or heaven existed in this world, but at least he knew this much, that there existed some almighty power that guided these pitiful souls to their next destination. Perhaps the rumors about the legendary hell also existed in this world, but Yi Shiwen did not know, neither did he want to know. After reciting prayers for 3 days nonstop, Yi Shiwen not only was able to set free countless souls, even his own mind seemed to have been baptized in the process. Originally, he vaguely felt somewhat tired. Since the day he came to this world, all he thought about was survival. Being an ordinary human from a different world, he had to learn to be ruthless. He had to develop conviction to kill people without a single thought, just for the sake of continued survival of himself and his family. He had to struggle to get stronger, but his mind was not at peace. But after 3 days of baptism, now, his spirits were up. After setting free all of the resentment and souls, he finally stood up. It was time to go back. He had been on this trip for 10 days and must go back to Chinji Island. A rainbow appeared under his feet. He turned into a streamer and disappeared from the seabed. Chinji Island had a somewhat lively atmosphere, and everyone was excited. The so-called competition among the major forces of Great U State was being carried out here. Already, half of the competition was over, and after this competition would be over, perhaps Chinji Island would become famous throughout the Great U State. Above the arena, one of the elite core disciples, Hua Menghan, could be seen standing next to the referee. Iyuan School's disciple, Hua Menghan, wins today's game. Above the high stand, a partly figure stood up and said in an announcing fashion, "Hasn't Yi Shiwen come back? Their days have already passed. Since he doesn't dare to act, I will not force him so long as he knocks his head 3 times on the ground and admits defeat before His Highness, the 8th Prince." There was a sudden commotion among the disciples, especially the disciples of Iyuan School. They were staring at that man and clenching their teeth. If Yi Shiwen agreed to knock his head 3 times on the ground and admitted defeat, it would not just be an insult to Yi Shiwen, but for entire Iyuan School. Feng Kong. At this time, Hua Menghan, who was still on the stage, said aloud, "Your demands are too unreasonable. You just decided on your own and issued a challenge without informing anyone. How will Yi Shiwen come to know about this thing about 3 days period? This is purely absurd." Hua Menghan's breath revealed that she had already partially entered the truth realm, and very soon, she would completely step into it. And that figure was actually the commander-in-chief of Imperial Guards, Feng Kong. Since the members of Imperial Guards lost at the hands of Yi Shiwen, unexpectedly, their commander-in-chief personally went into action. Setting the limit of 3 days was just to leave no room for negotiation for Yi Shiwen if he was to cross the limit. Humph! I that Yi Shiwen has dared to humiliate the members of Imperial Guards, which is capital crime. His Highness doesn't need to act himself, because I will kill him. That figure snorted and said with a cold smile on his face. Although the disciples of Yi Yuan School were also present there, but he didn't care and openly announced the death penalty to Yi Shiwen. He was much more overbearing than the other members of Imperial's guards. Kill me? You think you are capable enough? You cannot achieve such a thing even in your dreams. A mocking voice transmitted from afar, and a figure dropped from the sky, right onto the arena, and stood next to Hua Menghan. Seeing Hua Menghan, Yi Shiwen nodded slightly to thank her for speaking in his favor. Seeing Yi Shiwen appear suddenly out of nowhere, Hua Menghan was somewhat surprised, but was a little worried as well. After all, everyone knew how terrifying a guy Feng Kong actually. No one would dare to underestimate the commander-in-chief of Imperial Guards. Although he was a subordinate of the 8th Prince, but was absolutely not strong enough when compared to a powerhouse like 8th Prince. You are Yi Shiwen? Two sharp and piercing eyes focused upon Yi Shiwen, as if trying to see through him in general, but simply could not see through his cultivation. It seemed like Yi Shiwen's body was wrapped in fog, and he was able to see through his cultivation. Well, you seem impatient to die, Feng Kong coldly said and glared at Yi Shiwen, as if looking at a dead person. At this time, Yi Shiwen assessed Feng Kong, who was clad in blue robe. His stature was grandiose, and a proud look was spread on his face, like a young hero. It was difficult to imagine that such a peerless genius, a young hero, actually submitted to the 8th Prince. Simply unbelievable. Imperial Guards are nothing but mediocre people, a pathetic bunch of slaves and dogs. Yi Shiwen indifferently said, I have heard that beating with stick is a good method to tame dogs. It seems your master had taught you well. You're just an ant-like existence. Today I will crush you like a stinking bug. Feng Kong coldly stared at Yi Shiwen. He appeared incomparably overbearing, and one could see that his style was almost similar to that of 8th Prince. Because the members of Imperial Guards were almost all the same, out of style, just like the 8th Prince. If you are really so eager to die, I'll help you out, Yi Shiwen said in a cold voice. Bring it on. Killing intention was indiscriminately building up in Yi Shiwen's heart. This Feng Kong was an outstanding disciple, who was later subdued by the 8th Prince and had since been following him, setting up formidable Imperial Guards to serve the 8th Prince. However, the killing intention in Yi Shiwen's heart was surging, because even if Feng Kong was acting up for the prestige of his Imperial Guards, he wouldn't just sit back and do nothing. I cannot wait to kill you, because only with your blood, I will be able to wash off the desecration of His Highness. Feng Kong shouted, and a surge of violent, imposing aura swept across the arena. I will make sure to break each and every bone in your body. Suddenly, many people's gazes were focused on the two men. They were waiting for so many days, right for this moment, and finally, the major drama was going to begin on stage. In fact, several people weren't waiting here to watch the general competition, but were actually eager to witness this battle. Imperial Guards were humiliated by Yi Shiwen, so considering their overbearing personality, how could they let this go? But one expected that the commander-in-chief would personally come out to challenge Yi Shiwen. The strongest subordinate of the 8th Prince actually personally went into action. This obviously showed that 8th Prince was attaching great importance to Yi Shiwen, but it also demonstrated their determination to get rid of Yi Shiwen. Everyone was thinking that if Yi Shiwen managed to sustain this hurdle and safely went back to Yi Yuan School, later, they might be able to see this stunning battle between him and the 8th Prince. They understood that 8th Prince's world conquest had already begun, and Yi Shiwen would always be remembered as a sacrificial victim, a stepping stone. Several members of Imperial Guards were publicizing everywhere that this was going to be an epic battle. Not because Yi Shiwen was strong enough and possible 8 Prince's match, but because this would open up a new chapter in the history of Great Yu State, and would also be regarded as the first major battle inciting the beginning of 8th Prince's world domination. I hope your strength is fiercer than your glib lips. Yi Shiwen sneered. Since you want to break my bones, I would like to see whether you have the strength to do it. To be continued. Chapter 193. NT. Regular chapter. Expect more chapters by tonight. Chapter 193. Who is crazier than whom? Yizai went in and conceal the killing intention building up in his heart. In fact, it could be said that none of the two experts was trying to hide the killing intention. Feng Kong was always quite overbearing and considered himself better than anyone, except the 8th Prince. In his eyes, the 8th Prince has a special place, but he believed that in the future, the 8th Prince would surely transform into an absolutely formidable existence, and even a legendary expert like Qi Fifan would not be his match. Not to mention, even now, Qi Fifan and other peerless experts didn't dare to touch the 8th Prince, even though they wanted to get rid of a nuisance like him. But in the case that a peerless expert tried to lay his hands on the 8th Prince, it was simply impossible to have no response from the royal clan. One must know that 8th Prince had several formidable supporters in the royal clan. Without the support from these people, considering the arrogant and despotic character of the 8th Prince, he would already been killed 1,000 times. Because of the existence of support from those old guys, Qi Fifan and the experts of his generation were unable to lay their hands on the 8th Prince. An 8th Prince indeed possessed an unusual heroic greatness among peers. There was almost no strong rival in his generation, thereby making things easier for him, and that's why he continued to act more and more rampantly. However, Yizhen was different, because he and 8th Prince could be considered as peers. In fact, he belonged to an even younger generation in comparison to 8th Prince. If Yi Shiwen really ends up beheading the 8th Prince, and the people of Royal Clan came into action, then the elder of Yuan School would also have a valid reason to fight for Yi Shiwen. Several disciples and peers died all the time. They continue to die generation after generation, but one must know when to criticize. After all, if Qi Fifan was to be taken into consideration, he was an invincible expert of his generation, a legend, and must have beheaded several peers to reach his current level. It was not like there were not many invincible experts like Qi Fifan in his generation. Rather, all of them had already been crushed by him. All of the disciples of Yuan School had their eyes on Yi Shiwen. There was anticipation in their eyes as they were looking at him. Now, no matter what kind of perception they held for him, they were hoping for him to win this battle. Only his victory could make them feel proud and elated. A golden arena was constructed on the seabed. It was made very sturdy, and even truth-level battles should not be able to damage it. At this time, two men were releasing their imposing auras in this golden arena. Hua Minghan arrived early and was observing from the spectators' area. Originally, the disciples of Yuan School were quite worried for Yi Shiwen, since Feng Kong had been famous for more than a decade, although as 8th Prince's subordinate, but the extent of his enormous strength was well known. Even if somewhat less than 8th Prince, but it was hard to find his rival in the younger generation. But now when they saw that the imposing aura of Yi Shiwen was no less than that of Feng Kong, they were suddenly surprised. Yi Shiwen was giving them pleasant surprises time and time again. The last time was no exception, and neither was this one. Especially on the high stand, Qi Fifan looked at the performance of Yi Shiwen and didn't appear too surprised. It seemed as if he was already expecting this much from Yi Shiwen. It did not expect that Yi Zaiwen's imposing aura would be no less than that of Feng Kong. It seems like in the last few days, he again had another fortuitous adventure. This Yi Shiwen is a strange guy. His cultivation rose dramatically and has reached such a high level, whereas a year ago, he was a nobody. But now, a year after joining main sect, he is already considered the leader of younger generation. Not to forget, he is being compared with a legend like Qi Fifan. Everyone was talking among themselves. If you have any last words, say it. Feng Kong coldly stared at Yi Zaiwen and said, I should say the same to you, whether you like it or not, but that 8th Prince of yours is going to regret his decision of choosing me as a stepping stone. The killing intention was boiling in Yi Zaiwen's chest. The opposite party was trying to completely crush him to fulfill his ambition. So Yi Shiwen couldn't possibly sit back and do nothing. He must teach them a thorough lesson. Then allow me to send you on your way. Feng Kong shouted and instantly struck the long sword in his hand. The endless sword light dazzled the surroundings, while the killing intention was surging everywhere. It seemed as if the killing intention itself had gained substance and burst out together with the sword light, releasing thousands of terrifying swords, which were cutting through the space itself and advancing in the direction of Yi Shiwen. The arena itself was not large, so these many swords instantly filled the arena and directly formed a sea of swords, with sword keys swirling everywhere. The innumerable swords seemed to have formed a huge sword storm in the arena and swept towards Yi Shiwen. Anyone facing this condensed storm of countless swords would shudder and certainly back off. Feng Kong went all out. His killing intention was authentic, and it didn't seem like he planned to go easy in this fight. The sword light was very terrifying and sweeping all over the arena. Yi Shiwen was dressed in black clothes, and in that sword storm, he appeared like a small boat, struggling to survive even for one more second and might drown any time. Yi Shiwen was just standing, with hands held behind his back, and it seemed like he was not doing anything. But at that time, a loud roar of dragon resounded, and a huge, coiling dragon soared up out of nowhere and began circling around Yi Shiwen to shield him in this sword storm. Secret rain clouds. The sword storm instantly made a full-on attack on the coiling dragon, as if to chop it into pieces. Coiling dragon was circling around Yi Shiwen's body and was constantly using its 4 claws to tear off the sword storm whenever the storm tried to approach Yi Shiwen, thereby stopping the storm from getting near him. Sword storm swept everything, while the coiling dragon roared loudly and continued to counterattack. It seemed as if both sides were like mighty and fearful currents, severely hitting each other. The sword storm was about to stop, but at this time, Feng Kong once again moved his hands, and his long sword released a terrifying sword light instantly, which appeared to have instantly cut through the space itself, and went across the disappearing sword storm and crashed into the huge body of the coiling dragon. But with this, it seemed like Feng Long invited the wrath of the emperor by attacking the coiling dragon. Today I will kill the dragon and use your blood to wash away your sins. Feng Kong shouted. Everyone was stunned because they never thought that from the beginning the battle between these two would be so horrifying, to the point that several true disciples swallowed their saliva. Both of them were evildoers/monsters and just too terrifying. If they were the ones fighting in this battle and facing such offensive power, then they would have already been beheaded by now. Among the true disciples, there were different competency levels depending on battle strength and cultivation level. For example, Qi Fifan and other peerless experts were considered the strongest in the truth realm. Then there were experts like Luo Yifan, who recently stepped into the realm. And Luo Yifan was only a low-level truth disciple, but he was famous just because how fast he managed to step into truth realm. Considering people take decades to step into truth realm, but Luo Yifan was a real genius because he managed to do it so fast. He was only in his 20s when Yi Shiwen killed him. Although both Yi Shiwen and Feng Kong were not the strongest among the true disciples, but the level of this fight was enough to disturb many people. You think you are capable enough to be talking about slaying dragons? Yi Shiwen sneered and shot his palm out, which instantly turned into a coiling dragon and went towards the sword storm. Boom! With a loud bang, a huge energy storm swept off, and Yi Shiwen directly caught the little sword light in his claws. You talk big, but don't tell me this is the limit of your skills. Yi Shiwen sneered and direct squeezed to burst Feng Kong's god sword attack. Then I'll let you see what real swordsmanship is. Boom! A terrible sword intention proliferated from Yi Shiwen's body and swept across instantly. An extremely sharpened sword intention shot up and cut out an outlet through the sea of swords. The sword key present in the surroundings was actually instantly evaporated in the presence of Yi Shiwen's sword intention. Ah, how can such a sword intention exist in this world? I am afraid experts cannot even dream about congealing such a sword intention in one lifetime. But doesn't Yi Shiwen use a long blade? Now he is using a sword and is still actually so fierce. Feng Kong is incomparably overbearing, but Yi Shiwen is also a rebellious expert. He actually intends to use the most adept sword attack to counter Feng Kong's sword attack. This is just like Yi Shiwen is trying to humiliate him in front of everyone. Yi Ziwen's terrifying sword strength suddenly shocked a lot of disciples, because they clearly heard that he was a blade master. Then how could he suddenly master sword skills? The truth was that earlier, Yi Ziwen called not use a sword, but he was versatile. People learn a lot. The proficiency of learning was different for each. Yi Shiwen managed to learn sword skills, and his swordsmanship was even more proficient than experts who were practicing sword skills for years. He broke out the terrifying sword intention, which was the obvious proof of his mastery over the sword skill, which simply shocked the world. In fact, they did not know that there was a mysterious space in the mind of Yi Shiwen, and as long as there were enough spirit stones, he could easily reach the most profound levels of any martial arts or skill. It was simply not a problem for him. And right now, he certainly didn't lack spirit stones. That's how he quickly began to learn sword skill and displayed it in front of everyone. For others, they might need to specialize in one skill in a lifelong process, but for Yi Shiwen, he could practice any martial arts anytime, whether it was sword, blade, or palm. For him, reaching the profound level for any of these was not a tough job. He believed that someday he would climb to the peak of martial arts. Then no one would be able to control his future. The mysterious space actually gave him one kind of confidence that he could master all kinds of martial arts. The source of this sword intention was also very simple. When Yi Shiwen had seen that terrifying sword intention destroying the members of Bai Majiao, at that very moment, he firmly imprinted it in his mind, and since then, he was crazily burning spirit stones to comprehend it, just to resolve the secrets behind this sword intention. However, he later realized that the sword intention was just too profound, and he didn't have the means to completely deconstruct it to learn its secrets. The sword intention he used against Feng Kong was far inferior to the one used by that experts in the tomb, but he felt that this level of sword intention was still enough to cope with Feng Kong. Feng Kong gave out a long and loud cry. He was angry because he instantly understood that Yi Shiwen used a sword on purpose, just to humiliate him in front of everyone. Feng Kong's face turned red with shame and humiliation. This whole situation was just like getting slapped right across the face. If they thought they were rampant, then Yi Ziwen will become more arrogant than they could ever be. If they thought they were overbearing, then Yi Ziwen will become much more overbearing than they could ever be. If they try to trample the dignity of others, then Yi Ziwen will thoroughly trample their dignity. They would be trampled by him like ants, and then he would personally tell them that in reality, they were nothing. This could be called as possessing an invincible and unrivaled confidence, something that could defeat any adversary. Yi Ziwen instantly shot. The long sword danced in his hands, releasing sword intention in all directions. This sword attack was not fastidious about any swordsmanship or the skill of a swordsman. It just completely and insolently broke 10,000 laws and released infinite energy, sweeping away terrifying sword intention everywhere, just like a mop made up of sea of sword ki. Yi Shiwen was too fast and the sword intention swept away invincibly, and in just a matter of few breaths, he approached the sword ki that was swept in the surroundings. Yi Ziwen's whole body was enveloped in a protective cover of Zhen Yuan, derived from the coiling dragon. So, without any worries, he entered inside the sea of sword ki. He was like an invincible being, because the endless amount of sword ki simply could not hurt his body. If you enjoyed the fight in this chapter, you should check out an anime called Heroic Age. To be continued, that you're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.